5 o'clock or a couple minutes after, and I'm going to call this rare and unusual meeting of the COA committee to order. And I will first call on Tanya Tully to call the roll.
Travis Bailey.
Here.
Nick Fountain.
Here.
Laurie Jackson. I'll come back to it. Looks like she lost having internet connectivity issues. Janine McAuliffe. Janine?
Here.
Okay, thank you.
Here.
Jimmy Team.
Here.
And Laurie, are you back?
I am here.
Okay, excellent.
Okay, well, welcome everybody. Those that are on camera and those that aren't, we welcome you to the May 28th meeting of the COA committee. I'm Nick Fountain, I'm the chair. And first of all, I think I'd like to thank all the applicants and the design folks for patiently waiting for not just this meeting, but for the last couple of months to get to where we can begin to see how to get things accomplished and let folks move ahead with their ideas and their property. But anyway, we are doing this on a remote platform, and that should be obvious now that with all the sound checks we've had. But this is the first remote meeting of the COA Committee of RHDC that we've ever had. And so I'll ask for your patience with me and with all of our folks as we proceed today. There may be some delays as we move between speakers and participants and presentations, or if we lose somebody's connection and need to get that back. Most of you probably have sat through a COA committee meeting before and know that this is a quasi-judicial body governed by the general statutes and the UDO of the city of Raleigh. And our job is to conduct hearings on applications for certificates of appropriateness like we're doing today. There are a few due process things that I need to read into the record before we get back to a more typical agenda and move forward with the hearings. First of all, we are able to do this because we're following the newly enacted statutes, Session Law 2020-3, which allows for remote meetings and quasi-judicial hearings during the declaration of emergency that you all are aware the governor has declared. Second, each person on today's agenda was notified before being put on the agenda that we would be using this remote platform, and every applicant consented to the committee conducting the hearing using this remote platform. Obviously, they would have known that they might face considerable delay if we didn't proceed as we are, and so we're all working together in that direction. At the start of each hearing, we will ask all the participants again to consent to proceeding with this remote platform. If there's a party objecting to the matter proceeding in this way, then the case will get continued until such time as we're no longer using this platform. Third, notice was provided to the applicants and the public in numerous ways with posting signs in the neighborhood and the like, well beyond the legal requirements, which we might have done if we were just doing the minimum, but we've always tried to do more than the minimum. But specifically, we provided notice by mail to all the property owners within 100 feet. Each notice letter notified the recipients, i.e. the neighbors of this remote meeting platform, and the letters also made clear that the person would need to contact the city if there were objections to proceeding in this way or the hearing for which the notice was sent. So we are not proceeding if we have a matter where the city has been contacted with an objection to the case or to the matter being heard in this remote meeting platform. So we also provided notice by posting at the sites in the neighborhood, which most all of you have seen, and by publishing notice in the newspaper and on the city's website. That notice had information about the means by which you could access and view the meeting, which you are now doing. Fourthly, we required that anyone desiring to participate here sign up prior to the meeting in order to participate, because we couldn't just have walk-ins with the video requirements that we have here. And so we had to think through how to do these things. So the information about the sign-up requirement and the information on how to sign up was included with the notice to each property owner within 100 feet, and included the city's website and a link that was included in every method of notice. So the individuals were also required to submit a copy of their presentation, their documents, exhibits, or other material to be presented prior to the meeting. All the materials that the city received, as well as a copy of the staff reports, the staff presentations, has all been posted online in board docs prior to this meeting. And so the materials that we're discussing today can be viewed at any time by going to raleighNC.gov/agendas and selecting the RHDC Certificate of Appropriateness Committee. And finally, everybody who signed up to participate, as well as city staff, were emailed an oath form prior to the meeting, and any individual who testifies or submits evidence was notified they would need to sign and return the oath form prior to the meeting, but we'll go through and do the oath again on the record at the meeting. Now, so with that, we always have some boilerplate and legalese, but as you can have just heard, we have even more of it today. So now we'll move to the introduction of members. The COA committee and the members of the Historic Development Commission are council-appointed folks who either are residents in the historic district or architects, interns, architectural consultants, contractors, attorneys, historians, urban planners, and historic preservation folk. And so we have here a collection of people, and with that, I will call on each member of the committee today to introduce themselves and to describe a little bit of your background and why you are a member of the commission and the COA committee. And I'll start with Janine McAuliffe.
Okay, thank you. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Great. Okay, Janine McAuliffe. I live in Raleigh. I have a background, degrees in architecture, and I'm a residential designer.
Okay, Laurie Jackson.
Hi, I am Laurie Jackson. I work on primarily historic restoration projects with an architecture firm here in Raleigh. I also live in a Raleigh historic landmark.
Travis Bailey.
Travis Bailey, Raleigh resident. I live in a historic home in the Boylan Heights Historic Overlay District.
And Jimmy Team.
I am a landscape architect emeritus. I live in the Blunt Street Historic District and live in a Raleigh landmark.
And I'm Nick Fountain. I'm a lawyer in Raleigh, but I live in a Raleigh historic landmark. And so let's see. And our lawyers, Francis Raspberry. And Francis, was there anything that you wanted to say before we move to the staff introductions?
My name is Francis Raspberry, and I'm with the Cawley Bridgen Law Firm, serve as legal counsel to the committee.
All right. And our staff consists of Tanya Tully, who is the senior preservation planner, and Colette Canane, a preservation planner, Aaron Morton, a preservation planner, and Marilyn Drath, who is taking the minutes, and our technology supervisor and all-around person in control today is Ray Ault. And so he is new to our process, but he is absolutely essential. At this time, I'll move to the minutes, and I would call for a motion to waive the reading of the minutes and to adopt the minutes And one of you, if you will raise your hand, I will call on you to make the motion. Mr. Team, please.
So moved.
All right, is there a second to that motion? Mr. Bailey?
Travis Bailey, second.
All right, any corrections or additions? Seeing no hands raised, we'll call for a vote on that motion, and I'll call on each counselor in turn. Mr. Team?
Affirm.
Mr. Bailey?
Affirm.
Ms. McAuliffe?
Affirm.
And Ms. Jackson?
Affirm.
Okay, so the minutes are carried, and I will note for the record there were 19 minor work applications approved by the staff since the last meeting, and we're now ready to move toward the hearings. The agenda for today, we need to approve the agenda, but before we do, I will note that we had on the draft agenda a summary proceeding, which was 1102 West Lenore Street. We learned this afternoon that there was a problem with legal notice to all of the nearby property owners. And so we have found it necessary to pull that matter from the agenda. And so we will not be moving forward with a summary proceeding. That said, what we now need to do is approve our agenda so we can move to the hearings. If one of you will raise your hand, I'll call on you for a motion to approve the agenda. Okay, Janine, will you make a motion for us?
I move to approve the agenda.
And is there a second? Mr. Team?
Okay.
All right, so so we'll go back through the process and vote to approve the agenda. Ms. McAuliffe, it's your motion. You vote aye.
Aye.
Ms. Jackson?
Aye.
And Mr. Bailey?
Aye.
And Mr. Team?
Aye.
All right, the agenda is approved, and we will now move to the evidentiary hearings. And let me explain to all the applicants and persons on the line that we are conducting these hearings in a quasi-judicial format. That means that this process is somewhere halfway between the legislative process of the City Council and our General Assembly and the judiciary process that we might see at the courthouse. But we nevertheless will be receiving evidence. We will have sworn testimony, and we're to make a decision as to whether each of these applications are for change or not incongruous with the special character of the historic district or the historic property. And we will apply the design guidelines that are referenced in the city ordinance in evaluating each application. Each application will be heard in that same way. We are required to be impartial. The staff reports are evidence that are presented just like the other evidence, and those staff reports were made available to us and were made available to the public and the applicants at the same time. If any of us had reason to discuss specific details before today on any of these matters, then that committee member will ask to be excused from consideration of that application. Now, and so we've got a number of these, and I will say from a time standpoint that I propose to take 5 for a break at 6:30. And we will hear everything that we need to hear on each one of them, but we don't need a lot of repetition. And frankly, I'll be asking applicants to talk to us briefly, but to do so primarily with a view to concerns they may have with the comments and suggestions from the staff. Those of you that have been in this process before know that that is typically our focus. So, but anyway, we'll have to affirm all the persons who are going to speak. And even though there's been an affirmation previously signed, we will do so once again, so that there will be each person will be sworn. So I'll do that by calling the cases, and then if we were all together in the city council, I would be asking everybody for or against that thinks they're going to want to talk to come forward and raise their right hand. We will do that a little bit differently here. But the first one that we're going to take up is case number COA 0020-2020, which is East Edenton. And I believe,
Nick? Nick?
Yes.
Nick, Tanya here. Did you want to affirm the staff at the beginning so that we don't have to be affirmed for each case?
I'll be glad to do that. And so why don't we do that for you all once and for all? But while we do it, we can also do Mr. Parker and Mr. Winter with respect to the 403 East Edenton Street. And so, Raz, do you want to do that, or you want me to do that in turn? Not hear anything from him. I will go ahead and do it. So I will ask for each of our staff persons that proposes to be heard on any of these to be sworn. So that'll be Tanya Tully, Colette Canane, Aaron Morton, to my knowledge. Do each of you swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give in the matter being heard will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? If so, say I do in audibly so we can hear you. Tanya?
Tanya Tully, I do.
Colette?
Colette Canane, I do.
Aaron?
Aaron Morton, I do.
Okay, now, Mr. Parker and Mr. Winter, you've heard how I handle that with the staff, and I will do the same with you. You and each of you swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give in the matter being heard will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. If so, say I do. Mr. Parker?
Rick Parker, I do.
Mr. Winter?
Craig Winter, I do.
All right, thank you for that. And so now we get down to the practicalities of what we have here. And I will ask, let's see, Aaron, you are the staff person on this one, I believe. And I'll ask you to explain the project for us.
All right, just a moment while Tanya pulls up our presentation. All right, our first case tonight is case COA 20-2020. This is for the address 403 East Edenton Street, located in the Oakwood Historic District. The proposal is to alter the garage and construct dormers. Next slide. This is a photo of the front of the house from East Edenton Street. Next slide. This is a photo of the garage in question as viewed from the public right-of-way at East Edenton Street. Next slide. And this is just a more holistic view of the garage from the end of the driveway. Next slide. So the staff suggestion is to approve with conditions that you've all been provided in the staff report. Next slide. And for this particular case, the applicant provided new information for your review as committee members and for public review that has been posted to board docs by the May 22nd deadline to do so. Among the information they provided were revised isometric drawings, dimension floor plans of the proposed changes, a scaled site plan with the staging area for construction materials indicated on the site plan, and additional email correspondence to provide further detail on the proposed conditions in the staff report.
Okay, it's my information that no one signed up to speak in support of the application or in opposition other than Mr. Parker and Mr. Winter. And but so we'll hear from you folks first. Mr. Parker, I assume that's you.
Rick Parker here. Yes,
Chairman,
what we propose to do,
Chairman, I wonder, I see that Mr. Parker is appearing for the renovation specialist. If we could just get in the record and to satisfy the state bar that he will acknowledge that he's appearing as a fact witness only and is not representing the applicant per se, but he's appearing just to speak on the facts of the matter and to answer any questions.
So Mr. Parker, do you understand that we can't have you practicing law without a license, but you are here as a fact witness and not acting as a lawyer advocate for your clients? Do you understand that?
yes, sir, Rick Parker.
Okay, thank you very much. Now, talk to us, if you will, Mr. Parker, about your application and the project, and particularly focus on staff's comments. I'll have a couple of questions, and we'll see whether there are questions from members of the committee as well, but you lead off, please.
Yes, sir. What we propose to do is take an existing garage from a house that was built in 2005 and add 2 dormers to the front, 1 large dormer to the back to make the upstairs area an office for the owner. And we will use light materials. The windows will match the existing on the house and the garage. And so will the siding, and all the trim and eave materials will be the same, as well as the design.
Okay, anything else?
I think that's pretty much it. It's just a simple project.
All right, Mr. Winter, did you want to speak at this time?
Not unless there's any questions from the
Right.
committee.
All right. Well, I will turn to members of the committee for questions, and I will call on each of you in turn, and you can let us know, and then we'll see if we need to go beyond that. We will raise hands and the like, but I'll call on each of you to get whatever questions you may have at the outset. I don't care which way we start, but Laurie Jackson, what are your thoughts on the project? Do you have questions you want to ask? And she's not appearing on my screen. Did we lose her?
I am here.
Okay.
All right, so I just wanted to clarify based on the new information that there are no changes to the garage doors.
Correct.
Okay. And that you did provide, again, several pieces of information that were covered in the staff comments.
Yes, we did, and I think we answered the questions they wanted.
Okay. I have no questions. Thank you.
And so let the record reflect that the other voice was Mr. Parker responding to the questions from Ms. Jackson. Janine McAuliffe, you have thoughts or questions?
I do not have any questions about this application at this time.
All right, Mr. Bailey,
Travis Bailey, no questions at this time.
Mr. Team,
My questions, I think, are going to go to staff relative to the conditions of approval and so forth, so we can wait till that point, although it might be worthwhile now just to clarify, because the applicant may have a comment. I noticed that the staff was asking for dimensioned or scaled elevation drawings, and the information that was submitted in my packet, the most recent revisions, the elevations were not scaled. I did get floor plan elevations that were scaled. So my first question is, does staff still need to have the scaled elevation drawings?
Jimmy, this is Erin.
Yeah.
Our intention there is that what the applicant has supplied to us is more of an isometric drawing rather than the traditional elevation drawings that we would be reviewing. So they're more difficult to read in terms of dimension and scale. And you're correct that the isometric drawing does not come labeled with a predetermined scale on the sheet. So it's hard for us to tell exactly what the size being proposed is. So we would like to request traditional elevation drawings at scale.
Thank you. So Aaron, while you and I are in conversation, you listed door specifications. I didn't see any in the submitted materials.
The only door changes that were proposed in the original application have been withdrawn. That's the garage door repositioning.
Okay.
So we no longer require door specifications.
What about the window specifications, including section drawings?
We have a good description of what the intended window should be. We are still looking for a window section detail from the manufacturer.
So not specifications, just window section drawing.
Correct.
Thank you. And for the last one that I'm seeing on there, window trim details, including an eave detail drawing. I think I saw a note from the applicant that he was planning to match the original. So can you address how that needs to be modified?
We do have a note from the applicant's email stating that they will have 3.5-inch flat trim to match the existing house on the window trim, and that would be wood, presumably to match existing. Tanya, as far as an eave detail drawing for each dormer type, what are your thoughts on that in terms of matching the existing?
This is Tanya. So what we have done in the past is either require a detailed drawing of the eaves, or if they're matching something existing, then we would need close-up photographs of what's being matched with some idea of dimensions, whether it's drawn on a photo or something like that. So one or the other.
So either an eave detail drawing or close-up photographs.
Yes, sir.
Thank you, ma'am.
Right, is that all your questions, Mr. Dean?
As of this moment, yes.
All right. I think I asked everybody. My question, Mr. Parker, is really directed to you, or expression of concern. I'm concerned with the large dormer in the back and how that dormer reads to folks looking from the back. And there's nothing in this file with pictures of what that's going to, or projection of what that's going to look like. And it's really hard for me to tell. I rode around the block, tried to look in there and see what I could see, but it's troubling to me. And so I would ask, what was your thought process in going with that large single dormer instead of dormers matching the front?
Rick Parker here. My thought process was this was going to be an office, and due to restricted space for the roof line, we were getting an area where he could set up his desk, and there's also a stairwell part of that dormer too, steps coming up from the garage. So actually part of that dormer is above the stairs. And so the size of the dormer, to make it symmetrical and also give him enough room for a desk and file cabinets and office stuff in that area, that's why we came up with the larger dormer.
All right, thank you. Thank you for that. Do you know that at the height of the fascia of that dormer, if I'm using the right terminology, how high is that off the ground? The top of the dormer, as it were.
Off of the elevation, off the grade behind the garage, if I'm not mistaken, that's going to be somewhere in the 16 to 17 foot area. Because there's not much drop right there in the backside.
Okay, all right. Thank you for that. Are there other questions from members of the committee for the applicant? Raise your hand if you have any. Are there other questions for the staff from members of the committee? Anything else? Aaron, anything else from staff before we close the public hearing?
No, that covers it.
All right, then with that, I will close the public hearing on this matter and we'll turn to discussion internally. And so what are the thoughts of the committee? As indicated, the only concern I had was whether the back side of this thing would be too dominant or perhaps not congruent because of that with the neighbors. But I really want to hear from the rest of you, particularly the design folk.
I would make the comment, Nick, in looking at the last photograph provided, it's page 20 of the COA materials. There's an angle of view from Northeast Street. And I think that without being directly in the neighbor's backyard to the north, I'm not sure that you would be able to see that large dormer in the rear from an angle where it would read as a large dormer. I think you would be able to see the front, the two single dormers, but as you're coming up northeast, I think that it's
Any other thoughts from the rest of you? We didn't quite get all of Laurie's comment. It froze at the wrong
be
time.
able to see that. That's my only comment.
Okay. Anything else from the rest of you? Janine McCall.
Let me make sure I unmuted myself. I agree with where Lori was going with that that is not a dominant view with that large dormer, and it's not something I think is incongruous. I could imagine that roof line happening on that structure.
All right. Anybody else internal to the committee have a question or comment?
I'll just add in, this is Jimmy. I'll just add in that these long dormers, we've seen a number of them. There's some precedent for people not only doing them as part of the houses, but with regard to these accessory or garage structures. Mostly in the case that was stated here from Rick, that they're looking to try to maximize the usable space. So, and I agree, it looks out of context with more historic houses. I noted that this house was built later, along with the garage, and the fact that it's on the back side of the house, I also think is another mediating condition.
Okay. Anything else from anybody on the committee? Let's see, Mr. Team, do you want to try a motion, or is somebody else going to volunteer?
I'll be glad to give it a try. So based on the information contained in the application and the amended application based on material received a few days ago and staff's evaluation, A, altering a garage and constructing dormers is not incongruous in concept according to guidelines sections 1.6.7, 8.12, And striking this next section about the garage door. And citing the following suggested facts. Facts 1, 2, 3, 4. I think we can skip 5, delete 5. 6, 7, down through 10.
Okay, you heard the motion. Is there, Laurie, you call on you?
I wanted to add to fact number 6. Is now the appropriate time to do that?
Let's get a second to the motion and then we'll add.
I will second that motion.
All right, and how would you modify it?
I would add that dimensioned and scaled plan drawings were provided.
Okay.
Okay, so I have a little bit of a struggle. I think that it goes back to the question that I had earlier. There were floor plans, but there were no elevations for the building that were dimensioned and scaled.
Yes, I'm just noting that what was provided was a dimension scaled drawing, and that was as part of the new information.
Okay, so there was a floor plan. Did we look there? There you are. You moved on my sheet. So there was a floor plan that was scaled, but the elevations were not, correct?
Correct.
Okay. So that last sentence, you want to change that to say what? Because it says we're not provided. Dimension and scaled. Well, how about if we said dimension and scaled elevation drawings were not provided?
All right, that works.
Wonderful. I'll accept that.
All right. Does everybody understand the motion which has been seconded?
This is Erin Morton. Just to interject one more time. Note number 9 does reference elevation drawings. That should read isometric drawings, and we're still looking for elevation drawings.
So it should read the isometric drawings appear to indicate?
Correct.
Thank you.
Yeah, so we insert the word isometric in number 9, and then we'll address the concern with conditions in the next motion.
Also, note number 10 reads the last section of that note. We do not have staging area marked.
Okay, so we would add that in. You still want that, correct?
We now have that.
Oh, you do? Okay, thank you.
All right.
Okay, so it should be designed, so a scaled site plan was provided with staging, was actually storage area, wasn't it? With storage area?
Right.
I think it just said storage area on the plan. With storage area identified.
Either should work.
Okay. For equipment.
All right, then I will call on for a vote on this motion. Mr. Team, you vote aye.
Oh, aye. That's my motion.
And Mr. Bailey?
Travis Bailey, aye.
Laurie Jackson?
Aye.
Janine McAuliffe?
Aye.
All right, and I'll vote aye. And so now, Mr. Team, you have a follow-up motion?
I do. I move that a certificate of appropriateness be approved, citing the following conditions under the staff comments. Under 1, A, B is stricken. C, modified to say window section drawings. And D, to say window trim details, including an E detail drawing or close-up photos for each dormer type. And going down to 2 can be removed. and 3 remains. And I think that's, excuse me, 4. Okay, I believe we decided that there are no critical root zone areas being impacted. But it says if required. So let's go on and leave 4 in there just in case something comes up.
Okay, we need a second on that motion. Janine McAuliffe.
I'll second.
Okay, the motion, you heard the motion and the second. I'll call for a vote. Ms. Laurie Jackson.
I was just going to say, should number 3 still be in there? Did we not get that? Is that not what was just provided?
This
What?
is Aaron, that condition has been met.
Oh, it has. Okay. Thank you. Then drop 3.
All right, so drop 3. Thank you, Laurie.
Or-
With that, Laurie, you in favor of the motion?
Aye.
And Travis?
Aye.
And Janine, I can't remember who voted and who didn't. But
I did not yet vote. Janine, aye.
and Mr. King.
Aye.
And I will vote aye. So thanks to the applicants for coming and being part of this process. You'll be hearing from staff in roughly 10 days. And you're done with dealing with us on this particular application. And you'll now be dealing with staff and hopefully getting on with your project. So thank you for coming. The next application is 219 Northeast Street, which is COA 0027-2020. And that is again Aaron's file, but Anne Monique Claire and Ashley Morris and George Claire. So just as with the others, we will need to for the oath to you, and I need for each of you also to acknowledge that you agreed with, you accepted this process here for moving forward with this hearing by this virtual rather than waiting for an in-person hearing, which could be several months in the offing. And so with that, I will ask each of you in turn to sworn, and I'll ask for a verbal response from both Mr. and Ms. Claire and from Ms. Morris. Do you and each of you swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give and the matter being heard before this committee will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? If so, answer I do. Ms. Claire?
I do.
Ms. Morris?
I do.
Mr. Claire?
I do.
Aaron, you were already sworn. Now, I would ask each of you also to confirm that you accept this remote process and agree to proceed with the hearing on your matter utilizing this process. I think you already told the staff that you did. But Claire, you're fine to proceed in this way?
Yes, I am. Thank you.
And Ms. Morris?
Yes.
And Mr. Claire?
Yes.
All right, Aaron, will you please explain this project for us?
Sir. All right, this is case COA 0027-2020 for the property located at 219 Northeast Street in the Oakwood Historic District. The proposal is to construct an addition. Next slide. This is a view of 219 Northeast Street from Northeast Street, the front elevation. Next slide. This is a view of the side elevation of the house, and you can see towards the back, the story addition. This addition is proposed to be built directly on top of that section of the house. Next slide. And this is a view from the other side of the house directly on the rear addition. I said 1 story, the grade drops, it's actually 2-story here. Next slide. And this is a view from rotating further around towards the rear elevation with the existing rear deck. Next slide. And this is a view still of the rear elevation on the other side of the house along the north property line, where you can see part of the main house extending beyond the rear deck. Next slide. And the staff suggestion is to approve with conditions.
Okay. At this time, I'll call on the applicants to speak to their proposal and to the staff's comments. Who is going to speak for the applicant?
Excuse me, Ashley Morris, the Pearl Street Studio. We are fine with the staff comments. Happy to answer any questions that the committee has. We have the homeowners here as well that will be able to answer any questions too.
All right, thank you for that. I won't call on Mr. and Ms. Clare unless there are questions or unless they have something they particularly want to say. But I will note that nobody else signed up to speak in support or opposition, and nobody asked to make any public statement. I will now turn to questions from the members of the committee. And Mr. Team, do you have questions?
Again, my question, I think, goes to staff. So do you want me to hold off until you get questions?
No, that's all right. You're talking, direct your question to Aaron Morton.
I would think that would be appropriate. Aaron, Jimmy. So your condition, under the facts, you talk under 11 about a tree protection plan was not provided. You cite their note about the dumpster will need to be located on the street due to the nature of the site and laydown materials will be located on the street. Since the construction activity will be along the side and the backyard areas, particularly the side yards, and just from being at the site and the photographs I think show it, and the drawing shows it, there are a number of large trees. So I guess my question is that typically we have asked for some level of ground protection, particularly where we expected a lot of construction traffic, even if it was foot traffic, people moving in and out. So can you sort of give me some feedback as to why you felt like the plan was not needed?
Jimmy, this is Aaron.
Thank you. Yeah.
If that's something that you want to add, we can add it. I did not immediately notice any mature trees upon our site visit that would be a concern, simply because things were going to be kept on the street and there's no opportunity for large, heavy equipment to be taken to the back of the site. If you'd like to add something in there that provides protective fencing, something like that, that's fine with me.
Well, I think that this is one of the challenges we have. Now, I'm going to hold this up. This is the drawing that I'm looking at from my packet. Okay, that was
I see half of it.
Okay, so there, can you see it now?
Sure.
Okay, so it was labeled the new site plan. And so I don't know whether these trees, maybe this is a question for the applicant or the architect, are the trees shown on here proposed?
No, those are the existing trees.
They are?
And yes, they are. And I talked to staff about whether we needed a tree protection plan, and they did not say that we needed one. But we're totally happy to work with an arborist to help come up with a plan of how to protect the trees.
So, well, thank you, Ashley.
Ashley speaking.
Sorry.
I'll wait. So Ashley, you've been down this road a few times, I think.
Yes, sir.
Yes, you have. So you know, and I can't, and I didn't go out and measure the trees. So because normally we ask for a documented plan that gets the trees measured, and so I'm not inclined to ask for that. And I do agree there's no heavy equipment, but the sites can be compacted and damaged from just people, you know, bringing stuff in. I know you say you're going to store everything out at the site, but I know things are going to start collecting on the ground level. So
Sure. And there are a lot of patios too. They're brick patios. And so we thought that that was a pretty good reason or area to lay stuff or have people travel down, since that's already protecting the root coverage of the trees. But I totally understand if you want to add more protection.
So, yeah, so, you know, when someone's operating on top of a paved surface, I don't really have a concern. My concern is the access. There's nothing on the drawings that illustrates where the construction access point will be to get to the house.
It would be down it would be down the steps in the patio. The other side of the house is not really accessible.
So if I'm facing the house, is that to my left or right?
To your left.
Okay, so that's where the two larger trees are shown.
Yes, sir.
Okay, so what I would ask that you work with staff to provide some level of ground protection, just some areas of mulch, which you've done in the past.
Yes, sir.
Just to provide those areas down there, no elaborate plywood structures and so forth. And this is again assuming that you're not going to be having any, you know, tired equipment back there.
We will absolutely do that.
All right, thank you very much. And that's the only comment I've got.
Okay, Ms. Janine, did you have questions?
I did have a question, yes, Janine. I note a couple places in the documentation that was provided, it makes it very clear that there's a change in the size of the eave on this addition versus the original house. And I can see where what looks like an addition on the back already has a smaller eave than the noted 12-inch on the primary structure. And I just, I'm guessing I already know your answer, but I'd like to understand just kind of all your reasons for that move.
The main reason was just so that the edges of the existing structure would capture the eaves so that they wouldn't protrude past the historic structure. If you feel that they need to be longer, that's fine as well. Where you have tight ceiling heights up there as well, 8 feet. So we're working with that as well.
That was what I thought you might say, and I wanted to just hear whether it was an issue of the gutter being proud once that goes on that new edge, or if it would all be contained if you were to grow at 12 inches and it would fit. If it sounds like that's what you're saying, could be accommodated.
Yes, 12 inches would be a little too far. 8 inches at least had the eave being captured by the historic structure. The gutters would be proud.
Okay. Thank you.
Any questions, Laura Jackson?
Yes, just a point of clarification. There is, it's noted, I believe it is fact number 7, the arched window. Is that a window? Is that a attic vent? Can you provide a little more information on that, please?
It's basically an attic vent. We were just bringing that detail out to the addition. I have glass in it right now. It would be site built, but it's in the attic. It could go back to being a vent.
Okay. Great. So, well, just one more question. Is it above the ceiling?
It is above the ceiling as of right now. That's the hard, we're not sure if we're vaulting that space yet or not due to budget reasons. So that's where the ambiguousness of the that piece. Sorry.
I see. No, that's okay. But it looks like it is exactly, well, almost exactly the same as the existing gable vent in the back of the taller portion of the house.
Correct. It's just bringing that one detail out to tie it together.
Great. Okay. Thank you.
Mhm.
That's all for me.
Travis Bailey, any questions?
No questions.
All right. Anybody have anything else for, well, I'll say one thing with respect to the landscape, Mr. Team. It looked like, I think you were talking about the trees on the neighboring property, which are immediately adjacent to this boundary. But the one you didn't mention is the large crepe myrtle toward the rear of the backyard. And and I would hope that we are careful with our lay down and our construction debris, that we don't foul up the big crepe myrtle either.
But I think it would probably, what we should do is add to the plan they're going to submit to provide a limited construction fence in the backyard to ensure that that large crepe myrtle is protected. I know we've had problems in the past that when we haven't done that, the construction activity seems to have spread out in an area that,
First batch got completely botched.
So would that address your concern?
Yeah, I think so. I just thought we shouldn't ignore the crepe myrtle while we were dealing with the other trees.
Yeah, I agree. All
right.
I'll make a note of that for the requirements.
Well, the fifth should have, maybe the sixth will have it.
I'm getting some background noise from somebody. Is anything else from staff? Aaron, you or Tanya, anybody have anything else before I close the public hearing?
This is Aaron. I do not have anything else.
Okay, and Ashley Morris, anything else from you all before we close the public hearing?
No, I think we're all good. Thank you so much.
All right, thank you. All right, I'll close the public hearing. Turn to internal discussions. Any discussion?
I'll just say that my comments and questions have been addressed.
All right, thank you. Everybody else seems to be nodding in the affirmative. Who would like to try a motion on this matter? All right, Laura Jackson. We need you in the minutes as many times as we can get, because after a while you won't be in these minutes anymore.
Okay. You all will give me just a moment. I move that based upon the evidence that has been presented in the application and during the evidentiary hearing, the committee finds that the proposed work constructing an addition is not incongruous in concept according to guidelines sections 1.3.1, 6, 7, 3.2.2, 4, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, and 12. Acts 1 through 14.
Second.
All right, that was the second by Mr. Team.
I got just one minor question. It seemed to me that you skipped 1.3.8, so I just like to have that gone in.
She did, just figure that's included in the motion. All right, now, were there adjustments to be made with respect to number 11, Mr. Team?
I don't think that the statement is certainly fine as this is. I think this would be under conditions.
Okay, that's fine. Everybody understand the motion? I'll call for a vote, and I'll call on you each in turn. Laura Jackson,
Aye.
Jimmy Team,
Aye.
Janae McAuliffe,
Aye.
Travis Bailey,
Aye.
and I'll vote aye. And you have a follow-up motion, I take it, Ms. Jackson.
Of appropriateness.
I lost your audio for a minute.
I move that the application for the certificate of appropriateness be approved, subject to conditions 1 and 2.
Second.
All right,
And I have an amendment to offer.
please proceed.
Add 1C, that a tree protection plan to protect critical root zones along the east. I hope I've got that, along the east, to protect the critical root zones for existing trees along the east side of the house. Parentheses, example, mulched surface areas where construction will happen, and that a limit of construction fence will be placed in the backyard to protect the critical root zone of the crepe myrtle. And that would be submitted to staff prior to issuance of the blue placard.
And Ms. Jackson, is that amendment acceptable?
I accept.
And everybody understand the motion as amended? I'll call for a vote. Ms. Jackson,
Aye.
Mr. Team,
Aye.
Ms. McAuliffe,
Aye.
Mr. Bailey,
Aye.
and I'll vote aye, and that matter carries. So thank you, Ms. Morris, and the other folks, and you are able to move on with this. And we're sorry for the delay through the spring, but maybe it's going to turn off hot and dry, and y'all can move fast. Thank you for coming, and we will turn to the next matter, which is 333 Fayetteville Street, COA number 29, 2020. And for that, Mr. Phillips and Mr. Carter, I'll ask you to respond to this oath. Do you and each of you swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give, no matter being heard, will be the truth, whole truth, and nothing but the truth? If so, say I do, Mr. Phillips.
This is Mike Phillips. I do.
Mr. Carter.
This is Chris Carter. I do.
All right, and you both agree that and accept our remote process for the conduct of this hearing?
I do.
Yes.
This is Mike.
All right, thank you. And Colette, will you explain this application?
Yes, I will explain it. This is Colette. As Nick mentioned, this is case COA 29-2020 for 333 Fayetteville Street. This is the former BB&T building, a Raleigh historic landmark. The project proposal is to alter the storefront and construct a new entry. Next slide. This is a view of the entryway to the property along Fayetteville Street. Next slide. This takes you a little further back along Fayetteville Street just to give you a view of the property from all sides, looking at that same entryway. This is from the corner intersection of Davie and Fayetteville, looking at that same entryway and giving you a glance of the property further down Davie Street. Next slide. Okay, this is a pretty big building, so it was hard to capture the whole view of it. So we're going to go through multiple slides of the same facade. This is from that same intersection, a closer view of part of the area proposed to be altered. Next slide. This is the middle chunk of the building with the stairway that has some minor alterations. And next slide. This is that rear portion of the building where the new entryway is proposed. Next slide. Again, looking at that rear portion where there's currently partially a parking area and looking back towards the Fayetteville Street. Next slide. And then just for your reference, this is a view of the property from the Davie and Wilmington intersection. Next slide. Staff's recommendation is to discuss the relocation of the wall and the stair alterations, and pending the results of that discussion, staff recommends approval with conditions.
All right, thank you for that. And at this time, Mr. Phillips, we'd hear from you on your project.
Yes, this is Mike. Well, we look forward to following through on the project, and we find the staff's comments as well as the whole process of working with them on this project has been great. And so we are here to answer any questions from the committee. And we think the conditions, the request, the processes that the staff has put forward completely reasonable. Thank you.
Are there questions from members of the committee?
Yeah, I've just got a question. I was curious about the relocation of the front storefront facade, or I should say the lobby facade. And I'm looking for its note. Let's see. To remove ATM and rebuild glass storefront and similar narrow style aluminum framing system. So rather than using the existing materials, you're planning to install new materials. How confident are you that you can match what's there now?
The existing doors, and there's two sets of double doors now. It is a pretty straightforward aluminum system. So we probably from about 10 feet, you wouldn't be able to tell the difference.
Okay. And is that true for as you turn the corner where you're moving that glass wall back? Is that true for that as well?
Exactly. There are a pair of single doors on that second entry elevation off the side stairs. So so that would be that basically stays put in a lot of ways. We would probably be redoing some of the glass work just to improve some of the seals and whatnot, but that stays pretty much as is.
But when you move that glass wall back, moving
Yes.
it north in, are you going to use the existing glass framing for that, or are you going to install all new framing?
You know, the glass framing, Jimmy, looks in great shape. I suspect as we take it up, we may find some deterioration to the interconnection parts. So if we can't reuse it, I think we would find something with a section that it matched it as much as could be possible, which is probably very close.
And when you talk with staff, were you assuming that you would reuse, or was there any conversation with staff about if you realize you can and you have to get a new material, just coordinating with to say, this is what we're going to use, is this okay? Is that okay with you?
Yes, that's perfectly fine.
Okay.
There's a fairly limited amount of those sections, the sill section and the overhead.
Yeah.
And so it would not be a lot of material, even if we had to customize that section.
Yeah. I'm just, probably thinking like worst condition, you get in to start to demolish the wall and move it, and it turns out to be more difficult, and you have to tear more of it up, and then you realize that it's easier to replace the entire system with new material. And I realize no one wants that, but I know how construction goes. So anyway,
fortunately, it's a pretty standard section, so we're in luck.
That's what I was sort of looking for. This should be So Kmart carries this.
Well, certainly Bloomcraft does. Let's put it that way.
Thank you, Mike.
You're welcome.
Any question? Janine McCall.
Thank you. Thank you. Question about what is happening on Davie Street. I recognize we're moving that, you're proposing to move that glass storefront 14 feet in. And then I know that topography there is sort of makes it a challenge to have access from Davie into that, I guess I'll call it an arcade, and that sort of, you know, in the spirit of the international style, that is that kind of bleeding of, you know, right away to beneath building that can't quite happen on that side with just the elevation changes. So I'm really looking closely at kind of how you treat that edge there. And I just want to hear a little bit more about the detailing of that rail. I understand the profiles of it, where it's coming from the stair handrail, but this is more of a guardrail situation. And I can't tell from the images here what's really happening between the structure. So maybe you could speak to a little bit of what you're thinking of.
Sure. That's a good question. And we were trying to keep the railing to a very minimum, actually to match what's there, which is in existence on that short side stair. And so as long as it just needs a handrail, we were going to use that section. At the very end of it, as just about at the middle of the building, it would either turn into a guardrail situation because of the height of the drop off, in which case we would need to go to a more elaborate, you know, with more components to assure the safety, or we do something on the outside of the building to keep that height difference to where it is below guardrail need. In other words, maintain the safety, but try to maintain as much of the adherence to the same railing style as possible.
Okay, thank you.
Questions from
and
rest
I have a little bit more information for Janine.
Okay.
At the very entry, as you probably have seen this, as it comes off of Fayetteville Street, it is actually flush with Fayetteville Street.
Right.
And then as Davie starts to drop off, the section that we are opening up to the to pedestrian access will remain level. It's actually, we're going to use the existing floor of the building as the pedestrian walkway that maintains a level condition with the inside floor of the building all the way back to the mid stair. So actually there's a lot of safety in not having to be, you know, traveling down a sloped surface. Along with a good surface on that newly exposed area floor, we think it provides a much nicer sort of pedestrian walkway in towards the elevator lobby entry.
Yeah, I followed your sort of taking that height of the main floor and as it taking the opportunity that it matches the sidewalk elevation on Fayetteville Street. I guess I do sort of still wonder where you're at with what you're going to need to do on that railing if you're getting to the height where you're going to need to turn it into a guardrail. And so right now, what I'm looking at in is this page 7, your perspective view rendering. It looks like you've got almost an aluminum type handrail, flat stop of some sort with nothing in between, or what am I looking at there? Or is there glass? Or?
Well, we could certainly introduce some glass panels. That would be part of the original design, but we took the original handrail design that is in place around the stairwell and simply turned that and went all the way to Fayetteville Street with it.
Right.
So the goal was to use that section as long as it met code, but certainly we could introduce some glass panels for some, you know, sort of transparency and more closure if needed.
Did you ever look at getting more of that international, you know, style type arcade more on that corner than you can achieve now? Meaning like, and I guess it's not our job to redesign anything, but it's that connectivity that you kind of cut off on the Davie Street that is just kind of what I'm kind of struggling with the proposal that you have.
And I'm looking as to how to answer you best. That you were wondering about the connectivity from Davie Street to the building?
Right.
Gotcha. So right now, there's the side stairs that are about halfway down Davie. And obviously we're maintaining those and actually rebuilding them, refinishing them to more of the original finishes that have been covered over a bit since the building was built. And the rest of that connection from there up to Fayetteville Street is actually a very shallow recess. I'm sure you visited the site, but
yeah,
it's only about 3 feet. In other words, it's not a pedestrian way at all. And so part of what we were looking to do was to sort of take that whole Mesian international style thing where they would recess the first floor glass line of the building to provide that very nice covered pedestrian way. And so right now, you can't really get under the building in that area. So this provides a walkway that is very wide and provides a nice entry that flows directly off of Fayetteville Street and goes directly back to the elevator lobby area of the building. Did I answer your question?
Somewhat, and I'm just going to make one more remark because I know there's probably more comments we need to get to. But so having grown up in Chicago, very familiar with kind of this urban gesture of this style building. I guess what I'm kind of getting at is, were you able to explore, or could you explore a way to connect that first bay, which would be the southwest bay along Davie Street, and not have that be sort of impenetrable from a pedestrian perspective? Because you've got the lowest point of that entrance at that point where you might need to mitigate a few stairs. And that's kind of the area that I'm sort of just challenged with seeing kind of, closed off as far as access. I can see where the view is there, and I can see how you come around the building to get there. But this type of building isn't usually directional to one street. So that's just kind of a part of it I'm just looking at.
Right. Well, and we are leaving the entries, as Jimmy was saying, only rebuilt, but with same or similar materials. We are leaving that existing front entry. And so there's the direct entry now, as well as this additional entry that not only connects Fayetteville Street to the sort of mid-building elevator lobby entry, but if you come up the stairs, a lot of foot traffic is now approaching the building from the opposite side from Fayetteville Street, parking decks, etc. And so we see a lot of foot traffic come up, and instead of having to stay alongside the building, midpoint on the building, they can come up into the building and be undercover. So this will actually give pedestrians moving in the opposite direction towards Fayetteville Street from South Wilmington a covered access or a covered way. So it actually works for circulation in both directions. And we did maintain the entry points directly on Fayetteville Street on the glass line where they currently are.
Right. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Janine, by the time you get to the second column, the second post there, you're already about 18 inches above grade, and it really would be difficult to have another stair at a halfway distance to feed that in.
You'd have a few stairs.
Yeah, what you'd have to do. Laurie Jackson, any questions?
Well, I've got a comment. I think your application is thorough and easy to follow. I appreciate that, as well as the sort of study of the existing floor plan. I'm sorry, the original floor plans and elevations. I mean, clearly you all put a lot of thought into this, and I don't have any other questions at this time.
Thank you.
Okay, Travis, anything?
No, sir.
All right. Well, I will say that honestly, I've been looking at that building for over 50 years myself, and I have darted down that little narrow space trying to stay out of the rain lots of times because the building was what was in between me and Cooper's Barbecue, and so I think this is a really nice concept, and with all due respect to the legendary folk that did the building to start with, I think this could have been really good if it had been done in 1960 or whenever the building was done. So I would hope that if you do have to change the railing, that you can use glass or something unobtrusive, and to keep the nice clean lines that it has. So anyway, I thank you for what you're doing. I'll probably still vote against you, but I'm impressed with it. So is there anything else from any members of the committee before I close the public hearing? Laurie?
Actually, I do have one more question. Can you talk a little bit about the floor surface? I'm looking at your page 8. You reference a new Mount Airy granite flooring.
Yes.
Can you talk a little bit about that particular selection? So I see that there is Mount Airy granite is what is there throughout the interior, correct?
Yes, and so it looked like the simplest thing to do was to take the Mount Airy granite, obviously kind of locally sourced, at least within the state, and where it runs up that sidewall, sort of rising from the sidewalk area, simply turn it and let it go across the walking surface. That gives us a very clean. It ties into the to the surface area of some of the other flooring, and obviously we would do a finish that would be have all the sort of skid resistance even when wet, so it becomes a safe surface, and it seems to give us a more monolithic look than introducing anything that introduces another pattern or whatnot that just sort of distracts from that very simple, clean, kind of austere international style.
Great. Thank you. And one more quick question. So you also note on your page 9, the existing floor plan has been modified from the original in that, was that a teller window that was added?
Yes. So, and not to talk bad about any former architect, but apparently when the bank came along, they sort of said, okay, now here's what you need to do. And they put all kinds of contraptions back in that area. That used to be a teller window, a night drop. There used to be an actual drive-through, 2-lane drive-through. And so the teller windows, they had to step down to reach the level of the occupant of the car. There's a whole bunch of stuff back there that on the interior is quite a collaboration of contraptions. On the exterior, it is not the building's finest moment. It was not really the original kind of design as it currently appears. And when you walk back there, there's all kinds of surfaces and details and whatnot that maybe it's just that it's had rough wear or something, but it is not the building's best moment. And so one of the things that we're proposing is to directly address all the flow that's coming from the South Wilmington Street side, from the parking decks, the housing, etc., to introduce another entry into the elevator lobby proper, but to also clean up that entire area and get rid of all that sort of exterior sheetrock and use some cleaner materials, once again relying upon the Mount Airy granite to give us a nice consistent feel. So that was the goal, to actually take where the architect had to twist everything around from the international style motifs and work up that teller window detail. So all of that will be cleaned up back to a condition that, I mean, it's probably a little bit of a leap of faith, but to say what the original architect, as well as the whole Mesian International style look, would have started with if they hadn't had to somehow force fit a teller window into the whole scheme. So there you go.
Okay, great. Thank you. That's all for me.
Thank you.
Anything else from anybody on staff? Aaron, anything else? I mean, Colette.
Nothing further from me.
Okay. Anything else before I close the public hearing? Okay, we'll close the public hearing. Turn to discussion. Janine, you want to try a motion on this one?
Well, can I make a comment first? I want a little bit of discussion here, just,
Okay.
I do think that move of pulling that wall back, I find that to be, congruous. I find that to be, very much in keeping with the style of this building. I don't feel like the railing is congruous right now. And I think part of that is just it's not been maybe detailed all the way, or maybe there's more kind of thought to be put into that. So I don't know if that means we can look at that as a condition.
Well, let me ask you this then. What would you ask to have examined in greater with a little more consideration?
Just understanding if it does need to get enclosed based on the height, what's it going to look like? Is it really going to be completely open beneath? I'm not sure that's to code, honestly. I don't do a lot of commercial work, but I don't know if that's even obtainable. So I just feel like it needs more detail to be more realistic.
Right. Well, it did occur to me that the railing could stop, if you could make it firm enough, it could stop about halfway between those first two pillars and give you a little bit of that opening to Davie Street where height didn't become an issue. And I mean, I understand they carried it to the all the way to the Federal Street, but it might be that if you could secure it and not have that post be a problem, you could drop it back a little way. And that would open it up some, but without cluttering the thing with stairs.
Well, I guess that is also just where I'm wondering if there were to be redesigning or reworking and closing it in, that would come back to just staff, or how would that happen?
I think that ultimately is what we have to decide.
Okay.
But let's think about what the reactions are to the rest of the committee, and we'll think about what do we need to do with it. I don't, because what you're saying is that you think that needs another look. You're not saying that you're so confident that we can make a snap judgment on the best design treatment for that particular spot.
Yeah, I'm hearing that the applicants haven't determined yet exactly what needs to happen based on heights that maybe haven't been confirmed yet. I'm not quite sure why that's not been determined on their side, but knowing it hasn't, I just would like to know that that's going to be looked at again, readdressed.
All right. So we certainly can call for more detailed drawing that could be submitted to staff without them having to come back here. If that's a need, if that's what the whole group thinks. Any thoughts, Laura Jackson, on your end? I'm sorry, I didn't see your hand quick enough.
You know, I do agree with Janine, and just based on these renderings, which are very nice and are a little distracting, it looks like the same railing detail is being used at the new Davie Street stair that they're adding. And there's also, I mean, it's represented as, again, just that kind of metal sort of band that turns and moves. But there's also the height issue there of, you know, there would have to be something to prevent a fall from there. So I think that I'm kind of understanding where they're going, but I think that it does need some more detailing. That is something that was conditioned by staff, but it is, so railing details and specifications would have to be provided and approved by staff prior to installation or construction. And I would think that, you know, if they're able to detail this so it looks like what they're providing in the, that would be fantastic. But I agree with Janine, if there's a lot of changes to the railing, then it might be something, I don't know, I guess staff would just have to determine whether or not they were comfortable approving that.
Okay.
That's all.
All right. Mr. Team, anything?
No, I'm fine. Thanks.
Travis?
I'm lucky to serve on a commission that's already got so many talented people asking questions, so not much from my end. One brief thing, and I don't know if this was covered on already or not, the railing that's under discussion, since it does mention a ramp to provide accessibility, would the railing have to extend beyond where it shows in the render to accommodate the ramp?
From the rear.
What page are you looking at?
This is page 8.
Travis, are you asking that from sort of a code compliance requirement of?
I'm just trying to figure out if they've got a ramp and they have, I don't know if by code or whatnot, if they would have to extend that rail out so it would look different from this render.
Yes, typically they would need to go 12 inches past the base of the ramp. So that's a good point.
And that assumes that the ramp exceeds 5%. I mean, I don't know that it's called a ramp. Maybe they've already figured that out, but technically, you know, it becomes a ramp if it goes over 5% slope. So they would just have to figure that out. And it looks to me like they would just extend the wall out another foot and extend the rail out.
All right, then.
And that being said, I think we may be getting into the weeds here, but that being said, typically for an accessibility related railing, the railing parallels the ramp. So that would be another issue that you would be looking at rather than it being level. If in fact it was an accessible issue, they would need to slant that ramp, the top railing of the ramp, to be parallel with the ramp.
That addresses the concern I had.
All right. Any other question or concern?
I have just some quick comments regarding the sections 2.6.1, 2.7.1, and 2.9.1. And these are all basically about and preserving the existing that contributes to the overall historic form and character. And I think that this application actually does that quite well, retaining the recessed entries. In fact, the addition of a recessed entry, I believe, is still in keeping with the overall historic character. 2.7, they are planning on, based on the applicant's comments, matching very similarly the existing storefront profiles. And then 2.9.1, the maintaining functional and decorative features of the building. And I think basing the railing design off of what is there, as well as the retaining of the Mount Airy granite and the new granite that they're proposing to match. I feel like those guideline sections are being met. So.
Well, honestly, I'm not sure that we should have started out calling this a storefront. I wonder if it's just not an entrance. And the notion of a storefront with respect to this style of architecture, I'm not sure really, it's just kind of hard to apply those concepts on this kind of building. But that's, that's our problem. All right, any other discussion from members of the committee? Travis, did you get enough of what you wanted that we don't have to reopen the hearing? Are you okay?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Then I will ask if one of you is prepared to make a motion, and we'll see where we go from there and what conditions might have to be added. Travis?
I'll take a stab at it. Based on the information contained in the application, altering a storefront and constructing a new entry are not incongruous in concept according to guidelines section 2.6.1, .2, .8, 2.7.1, .9, .11, 2.9.1, .13, 3.2.6, .9. And for this part, are we going to strike the recessed entryway, relocating the wall?
Well, I think what we need to say is it is not incongruous if that's what you would think.
Okay. However,
we'll deal with it
relocating the wall and extending stairs to the right of way is not incongruous according to guidelines section 2.6.1, 2.7.1, 2.9.1. And suggested facts 1 through 15.
All right. Is there a second to that motion? Laurie Jackson?
Second.
All right. Now, for discussion, is there any need to modify? Let's look through these findings. Anything else we need to say?
Fact number 14, based on our discussion, may need fleshing out a little in terms of, let's see. No information about a guardrail was proposed. Provided, yes, thank you. I guess just in terms of trying to identify the holes that are a little bit concerning.
Then how about a sentence that says, however, the detail as to the railing and let's see, was there another concern about the ramp was not provided? And then we'll deal with it in conditions.
I think mentioning a guardrail specifically needs to be in here because that is what that is, a guardrail, as opposed to, I think handrail is speaking more to going upstairs or down a ramp, and just make sure that that's included in here.
How about guardrail and ramp details were not provided?
All right. I see everybody nodding affirmatively.
Mm-hmm.
Anything else? All right, I'll call for a vote. Janine?
Aye.
Jimmy?
Aye.
Laurie?
Aye.
Travis?
Did someone second that motion?
Lori did.
Okay, aye. I vote aye, Travis.
All right, and I vote aye. And let's see, whose motion was it? You got a follow-up motion?
Sure.
Yeah, okay, Travis.
Just trying to pull this up on my screen. I'm sorry, I'm having trouble. I could not pull up the next page on my screen. Could someone else make the second motion?
Sure. Janine, can you do that?
Sure. I move that the application for certificate of appropriateness be approved. Let's see.
Last page of the comments with the following conditions.
Okay, page 3, with the following conditions. Let me peek at this. Okay. 1 through 3, and I see here we have door specs, railing details and specifications. I think if we added guardrail / handrail details and specifications, that would be appropriate.
Okay. Any other suggestions? Laurie?
Could we add to, guess it would be, well, it would either be 1A or 2B, ramp details. So how about, let's just add it to 2B. Ramp, comma, guardrail, and handrail details and specifications.
Okay. And that means we don't need an E. Is that what I'm hearing?
I think that's right.
Okay. Everybody understand the motion? Any other changes?
Yes.
Yes, sir.
To address my comments earlier, I would add 4 that existing window frame materials need to be replaced. Applicant will work with staff and submit a sample of a substitute material.
Okay. Everybody understand that?
Sorry, question. The aluminum, the storefront, is that what you're referring to, Jimmy?
Yeah, what I understood was that they were going to try to retain all those materials. My concern is that during the process of trying to demolish that and move it, they're going to find that there's more destruction than they're anticipating. And, you know, my concern is that it's going to start looking piecemeal. They may find it's just easier to put a brand new system in rather than trying to start jacklegging pieces together, and then it's going to look like a mismatch. And I think staff should coordinate with them on the substitute material.
Okay. So what exactly did you want to write in?
If existing window frame materials need to be replaced, applicant will work with staff and submit a sample of the substitute material for approval.
Okay. Sounds good. Sounds good. All right.
We still need a second.
Okay.
I'm sorry, this is Tanya. Staff did not hear a second.
That's fine. All right. Laurie Jackson, will you second? She's going in and out a little bit on her signal. So
I'm seeing people disappear right and left.
Yeah.
Travis Bailey, I'll second.
All right. Travis seconded. All right. Let's go to a vote then. Janine McCullough.
Aye.
Jimmy Ting.
Aye.
Travis Bailey.
Aye.
Laurie Jackson.
Aye.
All right. And I will vote in favor. So that carries. And Mr. Phillips, thank y'all for coming. Thanks for sticking with us. And you'll be able to move forward. I think you should be attentive to the comments we've been making in this hearing. And I want staff to remember that too, because we all think this building's important. Let's get it right. But thank you for coming. And with that, it is now 6:45. We're going to take 5 minutes for biology and be right back.
Thank you.
COA 30-2020. And that is 509 North Boundary Street. And with and I hope I've said this right, is Mr. Royer, is that how we pronounce that?
That's correct. Thank you.
All right. And Ms. Van Gorder and Mr. Beeman and Mr. Hester. At this point, I need to put all of you under oath. And so to that end, I will state the oath and I'll ask you to respond verbally to me in turn. Do you and each of you swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give and the matter being heard will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? Mr. Royer?
I do.
Ms. Van Gorder?
Yes, I do.
Mr. Beeman?
I do.
And Mr. Hester?
I do.
All right. And the other thing that I want to do is I want each of you to affirm again for the record that you understand we are proceeding here with this virtual hearing rather than all being in the same room, and that you are all in agreement that we should proceed in this way, given all the circumstances with this pandemic. Mr. Royer?
Yes.
Ms. Van Gorder?
Yes, sir.
Mr. Beeman?
Yes.
And Mr. Hester?
Yes, sir.
All right, thank you for that. And with that, I'll ask Colleen to explain this particular proposal.
All right, this is case COA 30-2020 for 509 North Boundary Street. It is in the Oakwood Historic District, and the project request is to construct an accessory structure. Next slide.
Okay.
This is a
go ahead.
View of the property from North Boundary Street. This is the front facade as it faces the street. Next slide. This is another view of the property from North Boundary. Next slide. So this is a view standing towards the rear of the building. You can see the rear wall kind of in stucco just to the right, and then the rear porch. If you look through the lower porch, the grassy area there is the proposed site for the garage accessory structure building. Next slide. And this is just a view in the rear yard looking back towards the structure. Next slide. So this is another view of the current rear yard. Again, the proposed site is to the right. Slide. And just a slightly closer view. Slide. Staff's recommendation is to discuss the use of corrugated metal siding, and pending the results of your discussion, if you choose to render a decision, staff suggests approval with conditions. Next slide.
Thank you for that.
And there was additional information provided and posted to board docs, and that was an example accessory structure location map, which we have included as the next slide in case JP wanted to discuss it.
All right, Mr. Royer, we'll turn to you now to explain your proposal and address the comments of staff. And if you want to address the concerns that were put in writing by Mr. Bean and Mr. Hester, you can go ahead and do that too for efficiency's sake.
Okay. Well, first, I want to thank the committee and staff for making this all happen in the current context. And as well, my neighbors, Jay Beam and Joey Hester, for the thoughtfulness they put in writing the letters. Just a brief overview. My wife Sally and our son Lucas our family's planning on moving back to Oakwood, and this is sort of the first step in making that happen. The accessory structure will be a photography and printmaking studio for Sally, with storage for some of that equipment and yard stuff in the basement portion. Addressing some of the concerns, I think that from the neighbor's perspective, if we could look or refer to the map that was just shown, I think you'll see that in the context, the percentage of lot coverage is not that this accessory structure will create, including the existing dwelling, is not incongruous. The accessory structure is smaller in volume than the main house in terms of what's visible above grade. The rough calculations are accessory structure is 11,000 cubic feet and the main structure is 19,000 cubic feet above grade. So the accessory structure is a little more than half the size in terms of visible volume above grade. One of the only way to really see the structure from the street is from the driveway between 511 and 515 North Boundary Street. And so if you're walking down the street and you stop there at the driveway, you would be able to see it. It's far enough back and the grade drops enough that it's, in my view, not particularly prominent, in the existing trees on 515 also shield the view of the accessory structure. So it's essentially not particularly visible from the street. In looking at the map, you'll also see that in relation to other accessory dwellings in the district, there's still a large amount of open space surrounding the proposed accessory dwelling. And that the size of the accessory dwelling, I've tried to highlight other accessory dwellings in the district with the red circles that show examples of accessory dwellings that are of similar size. So I feel that it's not incompatible or incongruous from that perspective. In terms of the design of the structure itself, I've tried to maintain a fairly simple utilitarian appearance, which I think is appropriate for accessory structures. That is, in its simplicity and simple materials, is deferential to the main structure. The use of metal roofing is pretty common and exists on the property. Metal siding is found in the district, although I understand that may be a concern that the committee may want to discuss. The stucco foundation is also common in the district and on the property. One point brought up in one of the letters regarding the riparian buffer, that is something that I want to address separately through the Environmental Management Commission. And that's my brief introduction to the project, and I've tried to address the concerns by both the committee and neighbors in that. So I'll pass it on to you now.
Okay. Tanya, can you go back to the in the intro from staff? There was a picture of the backyard with some torches or steel rods or something showing, and I want to be sure that I have a sense of where the boundary is. Yeah. All right. Looking at any of those, Mr. Roy, if you can tell me, are those torches? Is that represent the property line? Who's that, or is that hammock part of this property, or the people?
That hammock, yes, that hammock is on our property, and the property line is basically beyond it, where you see the wooden and then the stone, the wooden fence and the stone wall, and the vertical, elements of the posts in the ground there are things that our tenant has placed.
Okay, so those are just torchieres for use of the tenant.
Yes.
Right. All right. Are there questions from members of the committee for the applicant before we hear from the other folks? And I'll ask Ms. Van Gorder if she wants to speak too, but let's see if there are questions from members of the committee first. None? All right, then I'll, Ms. Van Gorder, do you want to speak in support, or are you fine with what's been said so far?
Thank you. I'm fine with what's been said, and yes, I'm fine with what's been already said. Thank you.
Okay. At this time, then, I'm going to call on Mr. Beeman, and let's hear your comments. Of course, we got your written material, and we're appreciative.
Okay, thank you. My name is Jay Beeman. My wife and I live at 521 North Boundary Street. Our personal home is approximately 70 feet from Mr. Royer's proposed new building, and I also own other properties that directly border this lot. I want to start out by saying that we like JP, and we think he's a very talented architect, and we would love to have JP and Sally back in the neighborhood. We will look forward to that day when it comes. However, there are several aspects of Mr. Royer's proposed project that we feel are incompatible with the Raleigh Historic District guidelines. Section 1.6.5 would prohibit the footprint of the enclosed accessory structure from exceeding the footprint of the enclosed structure of the principal residence on the lot, as this one does, by 28%. The proposed accessory building is also 10 feet wider than the principal structure on the lot. This section further states that traditional height and proportion of accessory buildings in the district be maintained. This proportion should be relative to the principal residence. This proposed accessory building is deceptively huge relative to the images on the COA application, with the back wall of the building being 28 feet wide and over 18 feet high, plus whatever is exposed above the full basement wall below. This is depicted as being backfilled, but in reality, that may be a challenge. The plan indicates the 20-foot height of that 28-foot wide back wall. Section 1.6.6 would prohibit new accessory buildings from being located and oriented in locations that are incompatible with the historic relation of accessory buildings to the main structure and the site in the district. The proposed location for this structure will not be behind the principal home on the lot, but will be centered between and behind the existing principal homes of his neighbors. Further, with only a 5-foot wide footpath on the opposite side of Mr. Royer's existing main structure, there is no way to access this proposed new structure without going across the property belonging to someone else. Not only is this proposed structure incompatible with the guideline, but it would be an intrusion on his neighbors. Section 1.6.11 would prohibit the proposed new accessory building because it detracts from the overall historic character of the principal structure on the site and design and materials, its alignment on the lot behind the neighbors' homes, and its overwhelming size. Outside of the guidelines, the proposed siting of the home is 4 feet off the right sideline of the lot, which conflicts with the City of Raleigh's 5-foot side setback spelled out in the UDO for accessory structures in this location. And furthermore, I have received an email from the Division of Water Resources stating that the house location appears to be within the 50-foot Neuse River riparian buffer. I feel that this could be an attempt to persuade commission to use its authority to override zoning setback regulations and the RHDC guidelines in order to allow the largest physically possible accessory structure of any size and design on the lot, which would then serve as a new acceptable standard for future accessory structures in historic Oakwood, and if approved, would render these guidelines meaningless. Mr. Royer does not live on the property currently, and to my knowledge, the existing tenants in Mr. Royer's duplex are not asking for any accessory structure on the property. I'm asking that the commission deny this COA and allow Mr. Royer to come back with a more acceptable design for the property and the neighborhood, and it would also give him a chance to address the Neuse River buffer issue as it affects and its effects on his proposed building size and siting on the lot. Thank you very much.
Other questions from members of the committee to Mr. Beeman before I proceed to hear from Mr. Hester? Seeing none. Joey Hester, we'll hear from you.
Thank you, members of the commission. My name is Joey Hester, and my wife Kenan and I own the property at 501 North Boundary Street. Our home is 2 doors down from JP's property, for which he's seeking this COA. Our back porch overlooks the green space where his addition is planned for construction. First, we'd like to make clear that we don't object to the construction of accessory structures in the district, nor do we object to the construction of structures which maximize usable space for the homeowner, including for unconventional needs and in unconventional spaces. In fact, we just finished an accessory structure in March for which we were granted a COA. Our first major concern with JP's accessory structure is its scale. At over 1,500 square feet or cubic feet, square feet, it will be 600 square feet larger than our primary dwelling and 450 square feet larger than our northern neighbor at 616 Northeast Street and their immediate neighbor at 618 Northeast Street. It appears that accommodations have been made for the vertical height of the structure in comparison to the vertical height of the primary dwelling at 509 North Boundary when viewed from the street level on North Boundary. The RHDC staff appears to have accounted for that fact, or the fact that the slope of the property will ensure that the accessory structure won't compete with the vertical height and scale of the 3-level home, and the excavation of the building's lower level in the new plan ensures that vertical competition won't be an issue. In our view, this is an inadequate approach for considering the structure's appropriateness compared to the main dwelling and others in the vicinity. The living space in this structure will not only dwarf my own home and others around it, the overall 28 by 28 footprint amounts to nearly 128% of the footprint size of the primary dwelling. I'm unclear in what way this can be considered accessory to anything in the immediate vicinity, and given the size of of some of the nearby homes, it will look very much like a primary structure on its own lot. Another concern we have is that this structure will be constructed immediately adjacent to a storm drain for which JP has been required to secure a permanent easement. We know this because we were required to do exactly the same thing along with other adjacent owners. It appears that the structure itself will lie outside of the 10-foot easement boundary that runs along the path of the underground pipe, but we believe encroachment of heavy machinery into and near the easement boundary is to be expected during the construction process, especially given that the new building plan requires significant excavation for the subterranean basement. We spent over 4 years dealing with erosion issues from the collapsing pipe, and we have serious reservations about any work which may compromise the integrity of the since repaired pipe and also the soil in our backyard, which we've had to replenish on numerous occasions. If cracks reemerge in the adjacent pipe, we will be thrust directly back into the conundrum that cost us thousands and cost the city of Raleigh hundreds of thousands of dollars to rectify. Construction may be technically allowable on this parcel and in such close proximity to the stream and its containment pipe, but we worry that it doesn't seem either safe or prudent. I'm going to leave off the issue of the new rules because I think Jay's covered that issue, and I respect that I'm sure JP intends to address that with the Environmental Management Commission. But I just want to close that we support accessory structures which complement primary dwellings in our neighborhood in scale and purpose. We believe this structure is a dangerous addition to an already problematic floodplain, and its size leads us to question what kind of precedent this will set for accessory structures in the future. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for that, Mr. Hester. I want to ask staff a question. Firstly, Colette, Mr. Royer talked in terms of cubic feet. Mr. Beeman talked in terms of square feet. Which calculation is the one that should be mattering to us, or is it both? I'm not used to hearing about cubic feet, but maybe that's appropriate in this situation.
I believe the application materials were all in square feet.
Okay, because I think that matters when we start thinking about the mass and scale in relation to adjacent properties. Now, Mr. Roy, I want to ask you a couple of things. I think that we are supposed to find things that are to be not incongruous with the character of adjacent and nearby structures. In a neighborhood like Oakwood, there really are many sub-neighborhoods, some with the very large Victorian structures. Other areas of the neighborhood are much smaller. There were different income brackets at various times over its history, it would appear. And so I can't help noting, I want to give you a chance to comment. I can't help noting that your map with the various other sizable accessory structures are not in this particular city block and are generally some distance away, mostly 2 blocks or whatever. So I wanted to give you a chance to talk about how this and whether we ought to be considering all of those or only ones that are within a block or 2 blocks, or do you have any thoughts on that with respect to how that should be addressed in this district? Mr. Royer?
Sorry, I think you missed something, but my understanding is that it's everything within the district that would be considered. I think that if you look at the map, again, there are some accessory dwellings that are down the street. Of course, the rear of the property is the boundary, the edge of the district, so I can't include anything beyond the rear of the property for this purpose. I understand you're trying to contextualize and that there are different areas within the district.
So yeah, so I'm thinking that some of those locations may be less relevant than others. And so while I'm asking you questions, also, okay, so if the rear of the property is the edge of the district, tell me about your thought process in citing this accessory structure that close to the side yard or the
yeah. Well, so a couple things. One is that I'm not clear on guidelines, and maybe staff could help out here about, when you're trying to cite references within the district, are you encouraged to, can you not cite any reference within the district? So the kind of point that you're driving, Mr. Fountain, I would like some clarification from the staff on that. But the reason it's cited where it is basically trying to get the footprint needed for the studio that works for the work that we'll be doing in it, that's basically the only part of the yard that we will fit in. And I was also trying to, knowing that that there is precedent for accessory dwellings at the end of on axis with driveways, trying to cite it on access with that existing driveway. I've talked with my immediate neighbor, John Zibby Zaretta, who owns the property that it will be closest to, about the project, and we're on. We are fine with where it is.
Okay. Yeah, I'm trying to remember the particular site, and I think you will want, maybe all of you will want to look at section 3.3, although that's talking about new construction of primary buildings. I think it's some guidance as relates to the accessory structures as well. As we think about that, let me see about questions from other folks. The rest of you have questions, Janine?
But I was, oh. Can you guys hear me okay?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Do I need to start again? Did you hear what I said?
No, yeah, start over.
Okay, thank you. So I don't recall which of your neighbors spoke about this, but a couple things I wanted to get your response to. One was that I heard that you can't access this accessory structure from your property. You would need to access it from a neighbor's property, which I don't see that on the site plan being an issue. So could you speak to that?
I think Jay was probably talking about automobile access. I'm not sure what, I mean, we can walk over there, we can, you know, there's no issue with accessing the structure.
Okay, pedestrian access, just walking over there is accessible. Gotcha.
Yep.
So also, I was not thinking about this because it wasn't in your description, but I think knowing that you are not compliant with UDO setbacks, usually when we are approving something that is not compliant, it's because of a particular site hardship or examples of precedents that are all very, you know, we're finding that a very consistent siting of, say, an accessory structure that close to a property line. And I guess I'm not feeling like because you just need it to be 28 feet that you have to be into your setback. And how difficult would it be for you to, you know, be consistent with UDO? And also, is there anything else you're not consistent with? Because I just want to ask that of you now, since that wasn't explicitly shared in your description of the project. I just want to make sure we're clear as to what you're sort of proposing here and how it may or may not be meeting those requirements.
Right. Yes. So I have no problem adjusting to meet UDO there. I think the intention was to position the building further back, as far back in the lot as possible. And so sliding, you know, east-west also means moving a little bit closer towards the street because of the stormwater easement. But I have no problem moving it to the 5-foot setback at all.
All right, thank you.
All right, Mr. Team. Wait a minute, we're not hearing you.
You're probably better served. So I got two questions. One's for JP, and then the other one I think is going to be for staff or potentially Raz. JP, regardless of where that building gets built at the back, how are you going to get construction equipment back there?
Down the driveway. That would be for, you know, where the daily, I think I indicated on the site plan, like daily labor would come down the side of our house in terms of people being able, anything that can be carried in, or the folks that are walking through would come down the side of the house. Anything that needs to be delivered or any equipment that needs to come back would come down the driveway.
And is this the one on the plan that says existing gravel driveway?
Yes. That's correct.
And do you own that property?
No.
Okay.
We have a very good relationship, and that the access is not an issue.
Okay. So thank you. That may come back up as a further discussion item. So I don't know who on staff. Let me tell you what I'm getting ready to ask in case there's an issue. Because of the references on the two people who spoke, the neighbors who spoke, one thing that occurred to me that I wasn't clear on, and that was, what is an accessory structure? And I went into the guidelines and I could not find a definition for accessory structure in the guidelines. So Raz, I can see you. I can tell you that if you're pulling out the UDO, you need to go to 12-3. You're not going to find it. You're not going to find it in the thing. So I went to the UDO and they have a definition for accessory structure, which I felt was quite informative since we kept using this word and I had no idea how the city looked at it. Now you can't read it, but it's right there. And so what I'm asking is it okay if I read the UDO definition of an accessory structure?
Jimmy, if my mic is on, can I be heard?
Yes.
All right. I'm surprised that accessory structure is not defined in the guidelines. Tanya, if you have anything to offer to assist us with that, I'm sure it'd be welcome.
Nope. Nothing to offer. We just missed it.
I don't think referring to the
If I may jump in as a means of consistency, or for us people who design, it's inappropriate to repeat something in two different places because eventually one gets changed in the other one. My assumption is that the definition, since it was in the UDO, which was an overall, of course, you guys did the difference with the CRZ. You have a definition for CRZs, but we got a definition in the UDO for accessory structure. I think it may have some bearing on some of this discussion. And I'm not going to read it unless someone gives me permission, Mom or Dad, that I can read this.
Well, I'm going to tell you to go ahead and read it. We'll decide what weight should be given it, but it may be persuasive and it may be controlling, but let's hear what it is.
Well, it just is what it is at this point. And so I'll read it. And I think you guys are perceptive enough, guys and girls are perceptive enough to pick out what the reason this caught my eye. Unless otherwise specifically regulated elsewhere herein, a structure with height greater than 4 feet that is subordinate in both purpose and size that is incidental to the customarily that is incidental to and customarily associated with any principal structure that is located on the same lot and detached from the principal structure. Should I read that last part again?
No, yeah, I heard it.
So I didn't realize that it was going to talk about the building size and massing. That's what jumped out for me when I read this. The use piece, we have no, as I understand it, we don't talk about use. Whatever he decides to do in that building is really immaterial to us. So
that's right. We can take an old house and it can be an office. It can be a residence. We're just looking at the exterior appearance.
Right.
Hey, Colette here. Although there is not an actual definition at the back of the guidelines, if you look in the things to consider as you plan, section 1.6, that first paragraph, some of the description could serve as a definition. And it does say, after some descriptive lead in, such secondary structures are always deferential to the principal building in siting size and scale, blah, blah, blah. It goes on, but I think it could help give you some kind of definition.
Thank you for that. Thank you for that. So that's good. And that elaborates more relative to some of the stuff that has been offered. It's, what we don't have, I'm realizing, is anything that describes the extent of the deferentialness that we're having to deal with. So thank you.
I don't know a way to eliminate the judgment piece of that.
I had one thought. Jimmy, I was having a similar thought. I was trying to understand why this was characterized as an accessory structure and not as new construction. And I don't know the answer, but
Tanya stepping in here, and the guidelines with the update talk about new construction of a primary structure. And staff used the accessories garage as an accessory structure section because it is not a primary structure.
Thank you.
All right, are there other questions, Laurie?
I did have a question just about the siting of the building on the lot. I think that the applicant stated that the building would not really fit elsewhere on the lot. And again, I understand there's existing site conditions with the stormwater easement and some other potential problems, but just, sort of looking at your site plan, it does appear that the building as proposed could align behind your residence. It would be a little bit of again, I'm not sure exactly what's going on with that stormwater easement or how easy or difficult it is to sort of traverse that, but can you speak to that at all, sir?
Yes, I would love it to be directly behind our house. The lot width is 28 feet for the front part of the lot, and in order to sit behind our existing structure and not on top of the stormwater easement, it would have to slide into that 28-foot width section. And, if you were to follow the UDO side setbacks of 5 and 5, you'd end up with an 18-foot width as opposed to the 28-foot that we have drawn. So that's the main reason why it's not located directly behind. And I did just want to respond briefly to the discussion around the definition of accessory structures and all that, and how to determine deferentialness. And, I don't know that it's spelled out anywhere, but size of a building is really what you see. And I've been trying to make the point that the volume, the portion above grade is slightly more than half, not including porches. So if you include porches, then it's probably just half of the existing structure. And the distance away from the street and the difficulty in actually seeing it from the street, I think I would like those to be factors that you would consider.
Thank you.
Are there other questions? Janine, do you have any?
No, I think I got my few questions answered.
All right.
Yeah.
I don't see in my material a plat of the lot that lays out exactly where are these various easements that we're wrestling with. Maybe I just didn't look in the right place. But in terms of the siting issues and whether and the extent to which it's feasible or not feasible might matter in terms of how we address this. The rest of you have any questions or concerns?
Are we discussing?
Yeah. Now, I'm not, what I'm thinking about right now, I would like to, I'm fine to have discussion and questions to the applicants or to those who were opposed, but I want all of you to be aware that we have had a concern expressed by another person in the neighborhood who was not noted here at this meeting. There was a question of notice and timing, and so I think that it might be possible for us technically to proceed with and ignore that particular neighbor, but and it might be legally okay to do it, but I think I'd rather hear from everyone if there is such a concern. But I'm proceeding with this because I really wanted to hear and give us a chance to talk to Mr. Royer here about his project and the concerns that we have, even though it may be that we ultimately conclude that for whatever reasons, including this this neighbor, that we're going to need to defer it. And I want to be sure that Mr. Royer understands all the things that we might need to be thinking about if we do have to defer it, so that we can move when it comes back up, whichever way we're going. So I want to be sure that all of you on the committee have asked everything so that those for and those against understand some of the areas of concern that are on the minds of the committee. Okay, Travis?
I had a question for the applicant as to one neighbor's discussion about access for vehicles and the applicant mentioning that it's fine for pedestrian access. I did notice that there is a garage door noted on it. Am I misunderstanding that?
Is that the old?
Travis, that was a staff error that I forgot to delete. I was going to get to that when you talked about conditions.
Oh, okay. Because I'm not looking at the sheet. I was looking at one of these drawings provided by the applicant.
Are you looking at the updated drawings or the original drawings from?
It's hard to tell. Everything is mixed together. I would assume it's the original drawing. So that was deleted?
Yes.
Okay.
Right. Are there other questions or comments, areas of concern from members of the committee?
I'm a little concerned about the siting and the size of the building. And I'm not really sure how to articulate that other than while the building is aligned with an existing driveway, the driveway does not belong to the applicant. So I think that, I understand based on all of the site limitations, I feel like I understand sort of how we got to this point. But I have a little trouble with the relationship to the primary building, and also the size.
Anything else, Mr. Team?
Yeah, I want to echo that. My biggest challenge right now for supporting this is 1.6.6, which essentially Lori spoke to. And I find it somewhat informative that the applicant's submittal, which was addressing the size of the garages, reinforces what I see as a critical relationship, which is the accessory building to the principal house on the lot. And the relationship that seems to be repeated over and over again, that it is mostly, if not wholly, located behind the principal house, not to one side. And so I'm at this point, I'm feeling very, very, very strong about being able to support the proposed location. I appreciate the applicant's discussion around the size of the building, but sometimes buildings of a certain size won't fit where they want to put them. And they may need to redesign the building, or the building doesn't really have a place on that site. So that's what. Also, I will say one other thing that I would like, potentially for those of you with more architectural background than me, there seem to be some concern about the materials. And I'd just like to hear you talk about whether the proposed materials, from your point of view, are an item that doesn't require concern.
Thank you. Thank you, Jimmy. Before I close this, since the staff had raised the issue of the metal, I definitely want some feedback from the committee for the sake of all concern with respect to the thing that appeared to be the principal concern of staff. All right, Janine.
I did want to, I think this might be something to direct to staff. I did appreciate their comments about metal corrugated siding being something mid-century that was found in the district, but not, I guess the way I'm reading that is it was not on contributing structures, and my question is, have we approved corrugated siding on contributing structures, new accessory structures in the district?
Colette, can you answer that? I think she sort of asked a compound question, because we're talking about contributing on the one hand, and we're talking about accessory on the other hand.
And I guess I'm looking to see, I don't see any precedents coming at us to support this material. So I'm kind of just going straight to staff to say, are there some?
I do not believe that the committee has approved corrugated metal, but I also don't believe that anyone has requested its use recently either. So I guess consider that. But also remember that this structure in itself is not contributing property. So it was used in mid-century structures or earlier. But I believe you are correct. It has not been recently approved on any properties, contributing properties with accessory structures.
But Colette, just to clarify, it has been approved for roofs.
Yes.
Just not as a siding.
Correct.
Okay.
And I cannot think of any corrugated roof examples. Certainly standing seam metal roofs have been approved frequently and often. I think that there was one recently that requested a corrugated metal roof.
This is Tanya jumping in. I keep hearing lots of question marks in Colette's voice, and I agree with everything she said thus far. I will add that on smaller, accessory buildings, corrugated, or 5V metal has been approved for roofing, but not siding. If you don't mind, I wanted to just make a little bit of a staff comment about the siting of it, and sort of where we came from on that. And y'all make the decision, of course, and we'll however you decide, and adjust accordingly as need be. But we have always considered, COAs are reviewed based on, property by property, but the exact property lines are somewhat invisible when it comes to reviewing COA decisions. A good example are fences. We look at them, generally, is it appropriate to have a fence between houses? Yes. Exactly where the property line is and who owns it, that's not something that we've gotten into, other than to say, make sure you have permission to build the fence where you're proposing to build the fence. And that was, the the thinking behind our not bringing up the location as being a concern from staff, because although it is not appearing to be behind this primary main building, it could potentially appear as an accessory building to another building. So, again, however you decide will affect how we provide further guidance, but that is where it was coming from, and that was sort of the guidance we had provided the applicant early on.
All right. Anything else from members of the committee? All right.
This is Travis. I have a question.
Yes, sir.
In relation to the materials question about the corrugated metal roofing for staff, when those types of roofs are approved, are they usually painted, or what kind of finish do they usually have on them?
Colette?
I'm going to defer to Tanya on this one.
Generally, all the ones that I can think of as having gotten approved have been painted. And I will point out that I have heard that JP has asked to speak one more time.
Well, that's fine.
To answer your question, Travis, painted.
Mr. Roy, go ahead. I can't see your picture, so I don't see a hand go up. And if there was a message to me, I didn't get it.
No, that's fine. Thank you. I just wanted to, I guess, ask Jimmy a follow-up question. From the point that you were making, that suggests to me that it would be inappropriate to build anything ever in, the back half, that side of the back half of my property. Number one, and number two is, I remember talking about this issue, this kind of issue with Dan Becker years ago about it's the pattern that you're looking at and the perception. So when you're walking down the street, you don't necessarily see property lines. And in fact, I don't think that anyone, except for the folks at this meeting and a few other neighbors, would know how the property lines work back in that yard. So you would perceive that structure as belonging. The perception is that the principal structure could be either 511 or 515, that there's a relationship that's not tied to the legal property line, but to the perception of lot. If you follow
I hear you, Mr. Royer, and that's not inconsistent with the comments from Tanya just now in terms of
yes, yeah. I just wanted
the approach that they followed.
All right, thank you.
That said, Mr. Beeman, Mr. Hester, you got anything else you want to say or ask? All right, hearing none, I think what I'll do at this point is ask if there is a committee member prepared to vote to defer this matter so that all of our comments can be given further thought and we have it on the agenda next month or when the applicant's ready to move forward again.
I have a question. I wasn't clear. This neighbor that you've been referring to, were they within the legal area of required notification?
Yes, they were within the 100 feet.
Okay, thank you.
And so they would have standing to appeal. And the question was, by the time they got notice, it was so close on the deadline to say they want to speak. That they didn't get on the list.
And they have indicated that they would want to come and make comment?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So, based on that, I would move to defer. One, to allow this person who didn't get legal notification And, that we give JP some opportunity to consider some of the comments that have been come back.
Is there a second to that motion? One of you? All right, Laurie. I see her hand goes up. Let the record show she seconded.
Second.
All right, I'll call the roll and we'll vote on the motion to defer. And so let's see, Janine McAuliffe.
Aye.
Travis Bailey.
Aye.
Laurie Jackson.
Aye.
Jimmy Team.
Aye.
I'm in favor. So the matter is deferred, and project will sort of go back to the woodshed, and we'll get a little more work done on it, and we'll have another crack at it. Okay. Now, so that takes care of it for now, and we've got about 15 minutes. We had indicated to the world we were going to be stopping at 8 o'clock, I believe. I'm not unwilling to keep going and try to get and knock these other two out. But what are the thoughts of the rest of you? All right, Janine says go for it. All right.
Go.
All right, then the next matter is 410 Cutler Street, file number 31-2020. And Mr. Lucy, if you will hear me administer the oath, and I will need a verbal affirmation from you that you accept that. Do you swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give and the matter being heard will be the truth, whole truth, and nothing but the truth? If so, Mr. Lucy, say I do.
I do.
And staff has already been sworn, and remind you, Mr. Lucy, that you already assented to handling this matter by remote meeting the way we are doing. You've been patiently waiting since 5 o'clock for us to do just that. And I take all that to mean that you still assent to us proceeding in this format rather than by a live hearing. That said, Colette, will you please explain the project?
All right. This is case COA 31-2020 for 410 Cutler Street. It is in the Boylan Heights Historic District. And the project proposal is to remove a metal fire stair, remove a door, master landscape plan, including new planting beds, remove chain link fence, install fence, remove rear stairs, remove patio, install deck, alter parking area, plant trees, and construct shed. Next slide. So this is a view of the front of the house from Cutler Street. Next. And this is a view from a slightly higher angle of the same view, showing you the current state of the front yard. Similar angle, same view. Next. Next. This is a view of the rear yard from the alley, showing you the metal fire stair and the existing rear stairs that are proposed to be removed and the current state of the rear yard. Next slide. And staff's recommendation is to approve with conditions.
All right, thank you for that. Brian, Lucy, we'd be glad to hear from you on this project and your concerns and comments on the positions taken by staff.
Sure.
Mr. Lucy, we can't hear you.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Hold on, I'm going to put on a headset.
Apologies.
All right, I have a headset on. Is this clear?
Yeah, this
Yes.
is better.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Great. Perfect. So yes, the landscape design much needed in our backyard, giving us some plantings. Some of the concerns of the staff which were addressed were the first of all the fence being of horizontal slats as opposed to vertical. That comes down to a preference on the side of us and the designer, as well as the wood trim or edging as opposed to concrete or brick. So again, just a preference of materials, but we'll await the decision on the board before proceeding. But nothing much more to add on that front.
Mr. Lucy, how about the brown gravel?
Also, just a preference.
All right, so you are leaving that to us to decide whether those are going to become conditions in this matter or not.
Correct.
Okay. Are there questions from members of the committee? Mr. Team. Wait a minute. Let's get a microphone.
I have problems with microphones. So I have questions for the applicant, Mr. Lucy. I also have some questions for staff. So one thing that I noticed on the plan was that there was an existing conditions plan, and comparing that to the proposed plan, one thing that jumped out at me, actually there were two things that I noted. One is that in the north west corner of the property at the rear, there's an existing, well, it says brush pile. I would call it a hedge to be removed. And then on the new plan, it labels an area, existing parking area, which goes all the way to the property line. And we have a guideline that's 1.5.10 that says introduce perimeter plantings, hedges, fences, or walls to screen and buffer off-street parking areas from adjacent properties, subdivide large parking areas, etc. But that was the key piece. So, you know, there's an intention, and what was interesting is that you're fencing off your backyard from that parking area. So I'm asking you to look at doing one of two things, either running a fence down that property line to the alley, or to adjust your parking area to accommodate a hedge along that property line.
Mr. Lucy, we'd hear from you in response to the question.
Yeah, so there is an existing fence there today. It's the chain link fence. I guess you could construe the overgrowth area as hedges. But yeah, I think I would be amenable to a change wherein there is existing hedgerow in the plan, or potentially a fence that continues from all the way to the alley. I'm amenable to both.
Good. And my intention is for right now to leave this open. I'm not asking you to make a decision.
Sure.
But I think the guideline was designed to be a good neighbor. And so you can sort of work it out with staff as to what's appropriate and there are various options. I don't know if you know what a green fence is?
No, I do not.
Talk to staff. They know about green fences. You may find that as a way to accomplish this and not take as much space as a hedge would.
Okay.
I assume that I can. Colette, can we approve those in those locations?
Colette?
Hey, Colette here. I'm not really sure. We would have to see what it looked like.
Okay. Well, that's fair enough, but I'm just saying that would be another option to look at. The second thing I noted, which, and you can thank me later, but might save you some money, is down in your southeast corner, you showed the fence returning and going up the side property line to join into an existing fence. The actual existing condition is that the fencing for that property goes down and goes very clear that red cedar that's shown on your survey down there in the corner. So I think you need to look at that. It looked like it didn't exactly match down there, but apparently you're not going to need to run your fence back up that side lot line. Looks like you can almost run it down the alley and join it right into that. So that's just,
Okay.
that's just,
Yeah, I think I follow.
yeah, well, what it looks like on the plan shows that a section of the fence was, at least shows a section of the fence was extended along your side property line. Because there's a note there that says tie into existing fence. Are you looking at the landscape plan?
I'm trying to pull it up now from the COA.
Backyard area. This is a minor thing. This is not an approval thing. I'm just suggesting that you don't need to do what you're showing there, that someone has already put a very nice fence in for you.
Yeah, I think the intention of the landscaper was to retain that fence. I think there's not a lot of, we wouldn't want to double up a fence on top of that fence.
Exactly.
So I think we were gonna not build one there anyway and have the plantings kind of blend in and obscure that fence from our own property.
But since we're down there in that corner, I did not see a plan that you had a couple of trees like out on Cutler Street, or at least one that had a size to it. There was one that was on the south side of your property. I think staff noted that. There is an eastern red cedar at the back of the property that's 14 inches, roughly diameter breast height based on my measurements. That's a regulated tree for us. And we would be looking at some form of protection of the critical root zone in that area.
Okay.
There's also, there's also, well, I couldn't see the red maple, but the red maple, which is further going up near the house, looks smaller than what we would regulate. There is a pecan tree on the north side of your house, which is just at the property line, which is also a regulated tree. It doesn't look like you're going to do much work in there, so I'm less concerned about that. I will assume you'll be getting construction access off the alley.
Correct.
Okay, I would think that'd be a reasonable thing.
Yes.
So that's all I've got for you, I think. Colette, you there?
I'm here.
Okay, so I got a couple of questions, and I need a reminder, but I think I know the answer. We no longer have any jurisdiction over anything in the right-of-way. Is that correct?
You are correct, unless it's a building.
Thank you. Okay, so that's going to take care of a portion of that. Mr. Lucy, I assume you're listening. One of the things that I did note, and this is just an advice piece, there was an intention to use traditional like paver, slate or something in there, which my only thing I would ask you to look at is I noticed there were a lot of exposed roots at the surface in that area. And in order to get the pavers put in there, you would likely have to start cutting the roots. And those trees are owned by the city. They may have an issue, so just be careful and diligent when you do work in the right-of-way.
Are you saying the front yard, or I'm just trying to...
The strip between the sidewalk and the curb.
Yes, okay.
Often called the utility. If you go out there and look, you'll see where all these roots are at the surface, and if you start trying to put flat surfaces down there, you're going to have to start cutting the roots, and that would jeopardize the tree's health. So just be careful out there. We don't regulate that, but the city does. City has a urban forestry department that basically tracks that stuff. Colette, back to you. This is seems to be a repeat of the Montfort Hall review in that we've got a concept plan and I've got a whole list of plants, but we don't have a plan that identifies the plants with the plan. In other words, it doesn't say that we're going to put these shrubs here and these shrubs here. I understand that it's considered a master landscape plan. So my sense is that we're approving it as a master landscape plan with the intention that and I noted that there was a reference to phasing, that as the applicant comes back to actually do the work, that they will bring in a plan that identifies the final plants to be put in an area. Am I heading in the right direction?
That could be a condition, or you could require them to come back to the committee.
Well, I'm perfectly fine if they want to submit it to you. My concern is that since there was nothing in the staff requirements about submitting a plan, I mean, at this point, we haven't got a connection between the list and where they're going. So I think you guys, so the whole list of plants look fine to me. I didn't see any issues with the list of plants, but I do think we need to be more specific before installation as to where they're going to place them. And I'm okay with you guys doing that. You have enough information about the plants, unless you feel it needs to come back to us.
No, we're more than happy for it to be a condition.
Thank you. So what I will do is put a condition that we are improving that as a master landscape plan, and as the applicant moves forward, he can either bring the whole property back or like the backyard back with a plan where the specific plants are identified using the plants in this list. That make sense?
Yes.
Okay. Mr. Lucy, did that make sense to you?
I don't know.
Yes, it did.
Some of those plants are not going to survive on that property, in my view. But again, I don't know exactly where they're going to be. Maybe there's more light in some of those areas than it looked like to me. But we'll see. Are there further questions, comments? Janine, you got anything?
No, I think what I heard was that we can have the applicant reconsider the horizontal fence, and that to me was an important thing to discuss.
Travis, you got anything?
No, sir.
Laurie?
No, sir. I'm good.
Okay. Who wants to try a motion then? Or is anything else before I close the public hearing? Hearing none, I'll close the public hearing. And one of you take a hand at making a motion. Jimmy?
Yeah. I move that based upon the information contained in the application and the staff's evaluation, that implementing a master landscape plan, including new planting beds, moving patio, altering parking area, planting trees, and constructing a shed are not incongruous in concept according to guideline section 1.3.1, 1.3.2, 1.3.9, 1.3.11, 1.4.11, 1.5.5, 1.5.6, and 1.5.7. However, the use of wood sidewall in the so I'm going to go through this. We can come back and discuss it. Use of a wood sidewall in the front yard is incongruous according to guidelines section 1.3.9 and the following facts. And that's 1 through 11. And removing a chain link fence and installing a fence are not incongruous in concept according to guidelines 1.3.9, 1.4.7, 1.4.8, and 1.4.10. Again, we're here. However, the installation of a fence with horizontal incongruous according to guidelines 1.4.8 and the following suggested facts. And then C, removing a fire stair, door, and rear entry stairs and installing a deck are not incongruous according to guidelines 1.3.1, 2.7.2, 0.11, 211.1, 3.1.1, 3.1.2, 0.4, 0.5, 0.7, 1.6.6, 1.6.7, 1.6.1. However, the location of the shed and attachment to the deck is incongruous according to guidelines section. So I'm going to leave that for right now. We can come back and revisit. Incongruous according to guidelines sections 1.6.6 and the following suggested facts. And 1 through 7. And then I'm going to add one more, which goes back to, let's see. Make sure I'll do this here. This is going to be D. Location of a parking area directly adjacent to a property line is incongruous according to guidelines 1.5.10, and citing the following fact that the proposed landscape plan shows the parking area being relocated with a hedge being relocated adjacent to the property line with the existing hedge removed.
All right.
We've got a couple of things to clear up, don't we?
Yeah, but let's get a second to the motion, and then we can decide do they need to be conditions or what. Travis Bailey, are you prepared to second that motion?
I'll second it.
All right, thanks. We got a motion and a second. We'll turn to discussion. What were the problem areas, Jimmy?
Well, everywhere that we reference these horizontals, am I getting a sense from the committee that that's acceptable?
No, what, the fence? Are you talking about the horizontal? No, I thought we were going to require that the fence not be horizontal pickets.
Okay, thank you. Then we'll leave it like it is, and we'll change it to condition that the fences have vertical pickets.
All right. Okay, any other discussion on the motion? All right, I'll call for
The wood site wall was another one I think that you needed to discuss.
Oh, yeah. Thank you for that. Can we open it back up? Because I need to hear some testimony on that from Mr. Lucy.
Okay, there's a request to reopen the hearing, and I'll call for a vote on that. Laurie, do you favor it?
Aye.
Janine?
Aye.
Travis?
Aye.
Mr. Team, of course, is the one who needs to hear, so he votes aye. So the hearing's reopened. Go ahead and ask your question, Jimmy.
So I was not clear, didn't really understand these 12-inch oak site walls. Can you explain what they're about?
This is Mr. Lucy. This is a question for you.
Yes. My understanding is that they would be used as a divider between the plantings closer to the house and the grass. It was the design brought to me by the designer. I consented to allowing it as I thought it would be attractive, and therefore it is present in the plan.
So Mr. Lucy, let me follow up then. Are you talking about vertical boards that are like a foot tall or 8 inches tall or something? What are you talking about?
No, it would be, it's very low to the ground. Let me see if there was anything.
There's a picture.
There's edging. Yeah, I think it's, if you're looking at the COA application, I'm trying to figure out what page it is, but
it's on the front yard detail plan 1 L121.
Yeah, I think we're looking at the same.
If you look at the top above where the plan is, where it says 12-inch oak site walls, there's a little. It's hard to read for me. I can barely see it, but I think that's what that's supposed to be.
It looks like a very short wood wall. It looks like it has a cap on it of sorts. It's based on the photograph.
All right. Does that answer your question, Mr. Team?
Not really. I guess so what I heard was an edge separating the planting area from the yard. And so I guess this may go to staff. I can't think of places. I'm trying to think. I can't remember an experience where we've approved anything. I mean, if we've approved a wood edge, it was basically probably 6 inches height at most. But not 12 inches. And I guess what my concern is that 12 inches of wood, I'm trying to think about where that becomes as a traditional front yard material for walls.
Staff is saying it's not a traditional front yard material and that using wood is incongruous.
That's where I'm coming from. But would it be congruous to provide wood edging that was lower, 4 to 6 inches in height? Or is wood edging?
Staff has never seen wood edging approved anywhere in any of the historic districts.
Okay, thank you. So that's what I needed to know.
Okay. Is anything else, Mr. Lucy, in response to that, you want to say anything?
No, I do not.
All right, so I'll close the public hearing again. We'll go back to, I think we had a motion and a second, and we were in discussion. Any further discussion? All right.
I just want to point out, Jimmy, based on your concerns, so the conditions staff suggested do cover that the front yard site walls must be brick or concrete.
Yeah.
So they've taken care of that.
Now, we haven't voted on the.
No, we haven't yet.
Okay, thank you.
But I'm ready to. And so I'll call on each of you one at a time. Mr. Team?
Yes.
Ms. Jackson?
Yes.
Ms. McAuliffe?
Yes.
And Mr. Travis Bailey?
Aye.
All right, so the motion carries. Are you ready with the follow-up motion?
Yes. I recommend that a certificate of appropriateness be approved with the following information or the following conditions that staff provided. And in addition, that a tree protection plan be submitted to protect the eastern red cedar, the southeast corner of the site, that could be submitted concurrent with another condition with the applicant will submit either for the whole lot or in phases to staff areas that specifically label plant materials to be planted for approval, and that the parking area will be adjusted in order to accommodate either a screen fence or a hedge along the north property line. I'm done.
And let's see, where is it about the wood wall in the front? Oh, I got it, number 4. All right, everybody understand the motion? I think I need a second. Laurie Jackson, you second the motion?
Second.
Everybody ready to vote? All right, Laurie Jackson? Vote aye.
Yes, aye.
Janine?
Aye.
Travis?
Aye.
Jimmy?
Aye.
And I vote aye. So that carries. Mr. Lucy, thank you for your patience. You've got your marching orders now. You got a handful of things to sort out with the staff, but your project's moving forward. So thank you for for coming. So with that, we'll turn to the last one of the evening, and that is 617 Wills Forest, COA 32-2020. And I will remind everybody that this one comes under the street side HOD, and not, so it's different than the others in that regard. Now, so with that, Rebecca Necessary, I'm going to administer the oath, and I'll ask you to verbally agree and respond. You swear the testimony you're about to give in the matter being heard will be the truth, whole truth, and nothing but the truth? So say I do.
I do.
And you agree again that you accept the reality that we're proceeding here by a virtual meeting rather than an actual physical meeting, and that therefore we cannot see you as much as we would like. If you're in agreement, we'll go ahead. Then, Colette, will you explain this project?
All right, as you mentioned, this is case COA 0032-2020. It is 617 Wills Forest Street, which is in the Glenwood, Brooklyn Historic District, a street side HOD. The project proposal is to construct a rear addition and remove asbestos siding. Next slide. This is a view of the front of the property from Wills Forest Street. Slide. This is a closer view of that front facade from the sidewalk. Next slide. This is just a view of the current siding and a patch that was removed to show the siding underneath. Next slide. This is a view of the rear elevation from about a quarter way into the rear yard. Next slide. Same view, but further back into the rear yard. This is probably about 3/4 back in the rear yard. Next slide. And staff's recommendation is to approve with conditions.
Okay, it's necessary. We're at the place now where we'd hear from you and support your application and just explain what you're doing, and then respond to the staff's comments as to whether you agree with them or you got concerns, or how's all that going to work for you?
Yeah, absolutely. No, I think that we are fine with the additional information that has been requested, and are happy to comply and give information as needed based on what you all have shown in the staff report.
Okay. So there, now I'll turn to questions from members of the committee. Do any of you have questions for staff or the applicant?
I have a question. So with the street side over, the question is there, do we have any jurisdiction? Should we be looking at lot coverage?
Staff, Colette, you want to respond to that?
I do not believe that we have looked at lot coverage in addition applications recently for Glenwood.
In the street side.
Right.
Okay.
Correct.
And I would think that would be right, because in some sense it makes, if we can't consider anything more than halfway back anyway, then one of the factors to do the math is a variable that could go in any direction.
This is Tanya. The other reasoning behind it is that if additions that are not taller or wide, not all additions need a COA, and so, you know, if it's not taller and not wider, they could go all the way back to the setback line, potentially.
Right. Okay. Are there other questions? Janine, you got any other questions?
Not at the moment. That's sort of the one on my mind, but if that's not what we focus on.
Laurie, anything from you?
No questions from me. I think it's a good, thorough application, and I support staff's comments.
Jimmy? Okay. And Travis, you got anything?
Yes, and I don't know if this is just me being so hungry, it's hard for me to read some of these applications, but in the event that they remove the asbestos siding, because I know we had a COA recently where they discussed removing siding and then the potential of the siding underneath it being damaged beyond repair. In that case, what would happen? Like, what if the wood siding is damaged beyond repair? Would wood siding replace it or a different material?
That's a great question. So we've had a contractor look and actually pulled off a few areas of the asbestos, and we do have it in the preliminary budget that for a certain amount of patching and repair to be expected, and that would match the existing Dutch lap wood siding that is there. It's not expected that the entire house, that all of the original siding would need to be replaced. Should that happen, I think we would come to the staff with either a replacement wood Dutch lap or the artisan hardy that I know you guys approve in other places. But I think the preference here is to repair and patch as needed the existing siding, do what's needed to restore what's there. So that's our plan moving forward. And we hope that the areas we've pulled off have revealed enough for us to feel confident that will be what happens.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you for that. And but Colette, I would say that if there is a perception review that the siding under the asbestos is beyond repair, that's a significant decision, and I'm not sure what that shouldn't come back to the committee to decide if we agree that it's beyond repair or not.
There is normally a condition that I should have included, but neglected to, that does say that, if it appears that a significant amount of siding is going to be replaced or needs to be removed, that it be reviewed by staff, which then potentially would be reviewed by you. So that's something that should be added.
Okay, thank you for that. Any other questions? Yeah, okay, Janine.
Yes, I have a question. I think it's for staff. So again, I'm sort of getting, it's a little hiccup with the overlay district here, but question about if we were to approve this and the percentage of lot coverage exceeds what is called for and acceptable per UDO impervious surfaces zoning, does that trump the code requirements? As you know, so I know often if we find that we will approve, for example, an accessory structure sitting closer to the property line than zoning allows, that will trump the zoning requirement, and therefore it can be permitted because they've gotten approval from, they've gotten their COA. So I'm curious what this means for this property. Hypothetically, I don't know that it does exceed impervious, but I'm just curious.
I don't think we would be about trumping the UDO in a situation where we're essentially in an unregulated area. I think the UDO would be what they'd have to live with.
Okay, so a project like this getting a COA does not mean they wouldn't have to adhere to impervious calcs.
Right.
Yeah, Tanya here. I'll just clarify that it's only issues of height and setback that getting a COA changes the underlying zoning.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
And if it makes you feel this is Rebecca. If it makes you feel any better, I did do all the calculations and it is fine. I actually even did the, because I thought we were going to need to do them. So I actually did all of the calculations for a review in February, I guess, before we submitted the application. And we're within the same percentage of use of the lots in the surrounding on the street. So I think that, hopefully, if that makes you feel any better, it's a huge lot. It's a very deep lot. So I did look at that.
Great, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Anything else you need?
No.
Laurie?
I'm ready to make a motion.
All right, why don't you do that?
All right. I move that based upon the evidence that has been presented in the application and during the evidentiary hearing, the committee finds that constructing a rear addition and removing asbestos siding are not incongruous in concept according to guidelines 1.3.1, 0.2, 0.6, 0.7, 0.8, 3.2.1, 0.2, 0.4, 0.7, 0.8, 0.9, 0.10, 0.11, and 0.12. And the facts 1 through
11. Right. You heard the motion. Travis, you second the motion? All right. Any discussion? All right, we'll call for a vote. Janine?
Aye.
Travis?
Aye.
Emmy?
Aye.
Laurie?
aye.
And I vote aye. And so do you have a follow-up motion?
I do. I move that the application for the certificate of appropriateness be approved subject to conditions 1A through E. Well, I'll wait for a second.
Is there, all right, Janine seconds. Thank you. All right, what was
Mr. Chair, one quick question or friendly amendment.
Yeah.
The discussion that we had earlier about the applicant coming back if they removed the asbestos siding and needed to use a different material due to too much being damaged. Do we need to add that as part of one of those conditions?
Yes.
Yes, thank you.
We need to add what Colette said should be there.
Yes.
Right, and Tanya is jumping in that this is not at all having to do with a new material. If they propose a new material, then it's coming back to you. The only thing that staff would be looking at is whether or not we agree if it's deteriorated enough that they can put back new wood instead of replacing wood. Replacing wood with another material would be a completely new application.
Right. Everybody
I
understand that?
accept. Yes.
Okay. So with the 6 conditions that we've talked about, everybody prepared to vote? Travis?
Aye.
Okay. I didn't hear it, but that's okay. Laurie?
Aye.
And Jimmy?
Aye.
Janine?
Aye.
And I vote aye. So that carries. And so, Ms. Necessary, thank you for hanging around with us and spending a very pleasant evening here.
Thank you.
And you're done with us. You just got a few things to work out with staff, and you can move on.
All right. Thank you, guys.
What a great backyard you have. Good gosh. When the kids are gone, you can have about an acre victory garden. The other thing we have to do, folks, is reference 517 South Person Street and note that it's deferred and there's no vote going on with it. And given that it's an after the fact, they probably like it deferred forever. So that takes care of that. Is there any other business to come before the committee? Anything else, Tanya?
Nope, that's it.
All right. Any postmortem from anybody on how this new and different process worked?
Well, how about we follow up and we can, dwell on it and let each other know sort of some pros and cons about what we think about it, so we can think about how we want to tweak it for next time, if anything.
Okay, that sounds good to me. All right. Well, listen, it's great seeing all of you. Wouldn't mind being a little bit closer proximity, but anyway, at least we're back to work, and so that's a useful thing. So unless there's something else, wait a minute. I don't think that I ever got a motion to approve the minutes of the February meeting. I don't remember mentioning that. Do we need to do that? We need to do that now, Tanya?
No, I saw it.
It was on the agenda. I think I blew right past it.
No, nope, I got it. I got it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
good.
Janine and Jimmy.
Okay, good.
Yep.
All right, that's it then. Thanks, everybody.
Good job.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
See ya.
Bye.